Good evening, council, staff, and members of the public. May I have a mover and seconder to call the meeting to order, please? Councilors Garwood and Fisher, that the regular meeting of the Council of the Township of Springwater on June 7th, 2023 come to order at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? And that is carried. We will now rise, if you are able, for the singing of the national anthem. Oh, our home and native land, through victory love, in love, with glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God, keep our land glorious and free. Oh, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, we stand on guard for thee. Council, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest this evening? And seeing none, I will now call upon Darren Bella to present a delegation regarding a development project at 742 Bayfield Street. Welcome, Darren.
Thank you, worship, members of council. Good evening. Remember how to use this thing. It's great to be in front of you this evening in person versus virtually. And I'm here this evening on behalf of Mr. Sadlin and his family that have owned the subject property for many, many years, well over a decade. And we're here to present to council a new community. It's a unique community for the township, which we believe responds to a lot of the needs and items that are required for a growing community like Springwater and specifically South Springwater being the community of Midhurst. And we thought there'd be no better name to this project than Springwater Village, because as you see, as I go through the presentation, we are really creating a community within a community in Springwater. And we're hoping that council likes what they see with this presentation. And at the end of the presentation, I'd love to open the floor to questions and see if there's any comments from council. And I can also explain our next steps and what we plan to do moving forward after this evening. So next slide. So in looking at this particular property and understanding the township, you know, one of the first things when you're dealing with a property of this size is to really get an understanding in terms of what are the needs, what are the types of ideas that could be enhanced for the municipality. And really there were three key themes that we looked at in looking at what is the current housing stock like in the township of Springwater. So the three key themes that we came across was housing diversity. Springwater does have a lot of single family style homes. So we thought creating a better diversity of housing within the municipality makes a lot of sense. Community needs is the second, and in my opinion, one of the most important, because when you're building residential communities, you have to think about what are the new residents of the community going to need. And really what we feel is lacking in this part of Springwater is medical facilities. And so part of our proposal that we'd like to present to you this evening is the introduction of North Medical Campus, which will serve a variety of different medical needs for all of the residences in in South Springwater and through the county as a whole. And then finally, the last theme is creating a complete community. So not only looking at bringing in housing, but also thinking about what can these people do when they're living there? Are there other ideas that we can put on this piece of property that makes it more of attraction than just a place for people to live? So if you go to the next slide. So council, I'm sure, is very, very familiar with this site. We all drive by it, I'm sure, very, very often. So the site is highlighted with the yellow line. It's all colored in purple. And what I wanted this slide to really represent is to start to really understand the relationship of this property with the immense amount of residential housing that has already been approved in the Midhurst community. So we spent a lot of time working on this to create as accurate an image as we can. So as you can see, Springwater Council over several years has approved thousands of homes already in this section of Midhurst. And so that's outlined by the white dotted line. So you can see all of those draft approved developments that are approved, and some are underway, and there's a lot more to come. But that really then gives you a much better perspective in terms of what importance does this property play? And does it really make sense for this property in purple to remain as agricultural land, or can this land serve a greater purpose to the residents in Springwater moving forward, given the changes in the overall community size that is going to happen within the Midhurst community? So there's a lot of services, there's a lot of people that are going to be coming into this area. And we feel that this proposal can respond to those and provide much needed services to support that population that's coming. Next slide. So we've developed a community master plan that has a number of different components. I've been doing planning for 23 years. This, quite honestly, is one of the most exciting plans I've had an opportunity to work on, because typically a developer really drives the process in terms of understanding what their needs are. In this particular case, Mr. Sadlin is looking at developing a legacy. So this is not only about developing this piece of property, but really leaving something behind that the community will be able to use, and really create a landmark that can create some form of attraction for Springwater as a whole. So if we look at the master plan from the right side to the left, so we obviously have an immense amount of frontage along Bayfield Street, and centered where the new access point would be from Highway 26 Bayfield Street into the site. The blue buildings represent where there would be the introduction of new mixed-use medical facilities. So multi-story medical buildings for all sorts of different medical needs, chiropractors, doctors, the whole gamut, based on the fact that the community of Midhurst is going to have a population ranging between 30 to 40,000 people. And when we really think about that population base, the first community that I can think of is the city of Orillia in terms of population size. And if you look at the services that the city of Orillia has to support that population, there really is a lot of thought that needs to go into developing medical facilities and other community amenities. So that's really the one of the pillars to entering the site. What we've also done is, looking at creating different housing types. So we've got rental housing types in multi-story rental buildings. That would be market rent, but they would also be affordable rentals. So bringing in some affordable units into the township, I think, is a great idea, particularly within the Midhurst area, where there isn't a lot of affordable opportunities for people. And so those types of uses are focused towards the Bayfield frontage. As we work towards the middle of the site, we're very excited about introducing a year-round farmers market on this property. So that farmers market would also be a community gathering space for different events throughout the entire year. It can be a year-round facility, so it can be open in the summer months and can be enclosed in the winter months to ensure that there's 4 seasons of recreation, which is commonplace within Simcoe County. Surrounding the farmers market, there is a number of blocks that have been set aside as attainable housing forms, so not single family homes, homes that are more attainable for the general population, and those would range from townhouse, stacked townhouse, link homes, different styles of housing types to have some more affordability brought into the municipality. And I would be remiss in not clearly identifying the interface with the northern boundary of this property with the estate homes on Carson Road and in Glen Huron. So we clearly need to respect those homes, their values, which is what we hear a lot of when we go to public meetings, and making sure we do whatever we can to protect those values. So we've created a substantial buffer, which will also be used as a linear trail system to create a significant buffer to protect the privacy of those homes and ensure that there's compatible development within the long run.
Mr. Mello, the clerk has let me know there's 2 minutes remaining in the delegation.
I know there's a lot to digest here. The last thing I will speak to is one of the first of its kind within Simcoe County. So we're developing, we'd like to develop a tiny home community that is centered around a new urban agricultural park where residents can actually grow in their own produce on site and use that area for their own crop generation. We think that's a really neat idea and promotes sustainability. Next slide. I'm going to go through the rest fast. So these really are going to be broken down into those different components of the development. So here's a zoomed in version of the medical campus. So just to give council an idea in terms of architectural style, open space, green space areas, overall massing of the buildings, how these buildings would integrate into the site and really create a really new enhanced streetscape along Bayfield Street that looks different than what you see in the city of Barrie. Next slide. Here's a slide for affordable housing and apartment units. So based on our preliminary plans, we're looking at approximately 200 affordable housing units and 550 apartment rental units that can be occupied within those gray buildings on the site. Next slide. Here is just an image of the attainable housing units. So the different style of townhomes and how they would be laid out on the property. Next slide. Some semi-detached and the tiny homes in the top left corner, just to give you an idea as to where those would be located and how that would be integrated into the urban agricultural area. Next slide. And there you see there where the plan is to develop the urban agricultural area as part of an extension to the overall 4-season farmers market. Next slide. Green space, so obviously giving places for people to go outdoors. When you're dealing with more compact development, there's needs for greater green space and to foster community interaction. So not keeping people stuck in their backyards, but having them out in more public places to enjoy social activities. Next slide. And there is just a shot of what we envision to be along Bayfield Street as you're moving from outside of Barrie into Springwater as part of the new enhanced Springwater Village. Next slide. So just two more slides, your worship. So this is just the initial presentation, but we wanted to list here what we thought were some bridges and gaps that we could create between the city of Barrie and the township of Springwater. So we want to identify, and we listed there's for everyone to see the ideas that we have that I think are quite different for Springwater and what I would hope to be viewed as an exciting opportunity to enhance the township as a whole. And then finally, the last slide is a conclusion. So just so council's aware that we understand that's a lot to absorb. We understand that the township has an MZO application process. We didn't want to submit that application until at least you getting an idea as to what this proposal could consist of, because this is a lot of information to absorb all at once. So I'm here just to get some preliminary thoughts from council on this concept, but understanding from Mr. Silen's perspective that he is going to file that application and complete the necessary paperwork, and we'll be back to you looking for some more input and ultimately a decision on how we can move this community forward. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vella, and thank you, council, for your indulgence. We did go a couple minutes over, but that's totally fine. So I didn't see any hands raising, but thank you, Mr. Vella, for that. May I have a mover and seconder to receive the delegation from Darren Vella? I have Deputy Cabral and Councillor Moore for the delegation from Darren Vella of Innovative Planning Solutions regarding the development project at 742 Bayfield Street be received. Councillor, are there any questions for Mr. Vella at this time? Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through you to Mr. Vella. Mr. Vella, just a quick few questions.
Sure.
With respect to the convention or the condo hotel, would that be convention capable?
Yes, so because I was going through it quickly, I'm glad you picked up on that. So we are allocating a spot for a hotel and residential condominium building mixed together. The at-grade portion of the hotel could facilitate smaller convention opportunities, not large conventions, but there will be space for those types of events, smaller events.
Thank you. Follow on, please.
Follow on, Deputy Cabral.
Just two other things here. I know there's only one entrance to Bayfield Street, so that does provide some concern to me, given the number of people that you're anticipating are going to be residing there. But I also am interested in your affordable and attainable housing. That's pretty important, but I don't know whether or not folks understand what the difference is between affordable housing and attainable housing. And the last one is, are there going to be specific residential units identified for seniors, independent living?
Mr. Vella.
Sure. Thank you, Worship. So Deputy Mayor Cabral, we tried to stay away from the dedicated seniors piece because our understanding is directly across the road from us. The township has seen a proposal that deals with a complete seniors community. So what we're trying to do on our site is really complement those uses. And that's why we thought the medical campus would really be a good piece along the Bayfield Street frontage, given what's going on across the street. So we haven't really set aside units for dedicated units for seniors. However, in looking at the mid-rise buildings and the condominium style units, that would give someone living in a home in Midhurst today an opportunity to stay living in Springwater and downsize into a larger condominium unit. So that's what we envision the market may dictate. Affordable units, just to touch on that really quickly. So affordable units are units that are below the market rent. So I believe it's 30% below the market rent. Maybe the mayor has a better definition because she's sitting at county council. So those units, are for people that aren't making average incomes. Attainable units are for people making average incomes, but they're just the more affordable units that you would see for sale. Obviously less expensive than a single family home or a semi-detached home at that.
Thank you. Councilor, any further questions, Mr. Vella? And seeing none at this time, all those in favor of receiving the delegation? And that has carried. Thank you very much, Mrs. Bella. I will now call upon Cindy Shutt to present a petition to keep township communication in the Springwater News. And Ms. Shutt, if I can ask you to pull both microphones closer to you, as some members of the audience had noted difficulty hearing. Thank you. And you may begin.
Hi, am I supposed to say my name?
You can give us your name and your address if you'd like to. That's fine.
Okay.
And
I'm
as
Cindy
close
Shutt.
as you can get to the mics is better for those that are, yeah, there you go. Perfect.
I'm Cindy Shutt. I live at 1094 Floss Road 4 West in Phelpston. And I am here because I was very disappointed to hear that the Springwater Township Council has decided to stop communicating through the local newspaper, the Springwater News. I'm still confused as to why you would want to replace this cost-effective communication tool with a direct mailer, which would cost us taxpayers 4 times the money. I figured I couldn't be the only one, so I reached out to our community with a petition. As of today, we have 617 community members agree with 17 comments. So I'm asking you again to please reconsider. Thank you.
Well, that was perfectly short and sweet. Thank you. Thank you for that. Council, are there any questions at this time for Ms. Shutt for delegation? I have Councillor Moore.
Thank you. So I would like to just explain my position, and I know we've got a crowd here, and I think it warrants some conversation. I'd like to say, first of all, thank you for voicing your concerns. I've received all your emails. They haven't fallen on deaf ears. I always appreciate and I consider all sides of a decision before reaching a conclusion or a decision. I'd like to say too that this is, for me, it's not a newspaper issue. It's a communication issue. It's a brand issue. I think that by continuing to perpetuate an unfortunate and negative narrative that it's about something else is a bit irresponsible. It's not really about money. It's about the township itself. It's about all of us that sit on council are aware what the numbers are and the challenges that we have in getting our message to residents. Excuse me. It could be asking for a simple survey. We can't get people to fill them out. It could be asking for volunteers. We can't get volunteers. Community engagement in general is poor. And that has nothing to do with the newspaper. I enjoy reading the Springwater News. I enjoy working with Linda through the election. This has nothing to do with you. And I feel bad that this has become about the newspaper. I want to speak too about Ward 4 because this is where I am. Ward 4 makes up almost soon to be 40% of the tax base. I didn't receive a single email, a single phone call, or a text message from a single resident about this issue. And that to me speaks volumes. That says that people aren't hearing it, they're not hearing the message, or they don't know because they're new. We have a lot of new residents in my area and hundreds more coming. They don't know that in order to find Township of Springwater information that they need to look in the middle of the local newspaper. They just don't know that. And so we're missing out. We're missing communicating to people about job opportunities, bids and tenders, programming. We're missing out reaching a large number of people. And so that needs to change. And the other thing I would say is I've heard in Ward 4, we have a bit of an identity crisis. We have 4 mailing addresses. We have Utopia, we have the city of Barrie, we have Midhurst, and we have Minising. That's all Ward 4 just in one area. And it was super evident during the election when I had city of Barrie election folks signs on people's yards in my ward. And, you know, it just says to me that we need to do a better job as a township of reaching our message to folks. And if I liken it to private business, if I had a private business, which a lot of us do, and I need to spend money on advertising, you know, do I continue to do the same thing over and over again and hope to get a different result? No, I don't. I have to change it. I have to change what my approach is in order to reach the people that I need to reach. And so the direct mail is a way of getting our information in front of somebody's face. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. I have Councillor Thompson's hand up here.
Thank you, Mayor, and through the mayor to Ms. Shutt. Thank you very much for coming. I've also read Mr. Ampliford's, I'm sure he's here tonight, and I've read his letter and would like to kind of respond to some of the questions he had. I'm sure that all of our council members here want what is best for Springwater Township. For me, it's just a simple evaluation of the pros and the cons for staying with Springwater News. And for me, it's a pretty simple decision. The pros by far outweigh the cons. First of all, the cost. Direct mail flyer is going to be more expensive no matter which way that any member of council wants to spin it. The cost could be as much as over $80,000 a year when you include the extra time it's going to take staff to do the direct mailer. And we really still don't have a final cost on it, which concerns me. Second, more and more of our residents are opting out of opting for paperless communications with us. And at this time, we should ourselves be reducing waste, and we shouldn't be filling our blue boxes with unwanted flyers, especially township flyers. Third, direct mail flyer does not provide a better way of communication. In fact, it may turn out to be a worse way. We really don't know. No one has provided me with any credible information speaking to the benefit of a direct mail flyer. Fourth, for me, this is also an easy way to support local business. To say that council shouldn't lobby for or to stand for local business is just wrong. I think that's what we were elected to do. 53 local businesses advertised in the most recent issue of Springwater News. I would like to go on record to say that I support local business and that I stand with you. And fifth, this is an opportunity for us as council to actually listen to residents. 617 names on a petition I don't think can be ignored. Clearly, with the communication that we've had, that I've had, I know that all council members have received all the emails that I've had because it was sent to council email. And with this petition tonight, we should listen to taxpayers and rethink our position on this. I want you to know I am listening, I am with you, and would be happy to reconsider this and to help to find a solution for a better way. Thank you.
Thank you. And I see Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and I want to thank everybody who's come out tonight. I'm in a kind of awkward position because I'm not the Ward 1 councillor. I am now the deputy, and I have to take into consideration the entire township, much as the mayor does. When the staff report came to us, we were given 4 options, I believe. And to be quite honest with you, the most economical option that would provide the best coverage that was available to us was not the Springwater News, in my opinion. It was actually the Barrie Advance. They distribute to 53,000 homes. The Elmvale Springwater News distributes to 20,000. And I'm not trying to knock it, but the issue too is that maybe twice a month isn't what's required. And I know it's an emotional thing to think about, but to suggest that it's going to be $80,000 for direct mail, as Councillor Thompson has, I think is not a valid comment to make. The numbers that were provided to the Springwater News were not exact numbers, and they have varied all the way from $40,000 and now it's up to $80,000. And I don't believe that that's the case. So unfortunately, when I look at this and I think about a direct mailer, everything that we say that Springwater News, people throw it in the garbage. We say that the Barrie Advance comes, people just throw it in the garbage as well. We talk about direct mail. Yes, it goes in the garbage. But from my own experience, I look at what the direct mail is and I decide whether or not I want to throw it out in the garbage. And I'm telling you, if it says Springwater Township on it and it's of interest to me, I will read it. So that would more or less be my position. I think it's an opportunity to try something. I think that the other opportunity is the app. We also have digital signs that are now in place that are being able to communicate things to people. And you know, if I'm thinking about what the opportunities are that direct mail provides us, is it provides township complete flexibility on distribution of messages. A template for a newsletter could go out. It could be 1 page, it could be 4 pages. The distribution costs would be about the same. The other opportunity it provides is it's on township timelines, not on either the Springwater News's or the Barrie Advance's publication deadlines. It also provides the opportunity to direct specific messages to specific communities within Springwater Township, because if Elmville's having their water mains flushed, maybe the folks down in Midhurst, their particular email might have a different message in that part of the newsletter because it's going to be distributed by postal codes. So those are my thoughts. And that's why I supported the direct mail option. I think it's something that needs to be given a shot.
Thank you, Deputy Correll. And before I do move to Councillor Garwood, I think it's also important for us to look internally and through our My Spring Water with our direct mailing of our tax bills. We have had 1,453 homes in Springwater sign up for paperless billing, which says, please do not send me something in the mail. And if it's 1,453 homes, we can assume that there's 2 adults, if not more, in that. So we're looking at close to 3,000 residents that are saying, I do not want a direct mailer. So while we weren't given the opportunity during the last decision to bring this in, and I do appreciate, Ms. Shutt, you going out to the community, and also your mom who acclimates for walking home to home to get those signatures. I would like to just acknowledge that any time that the people go to hear, and we have heard you, and thank you to everyone who has responded to us. But I do think that often I'm sure we could go through the petition that you have given to us, and there will be people who aren't from Springwater, or there might be 5 from one home, and I'm not discounting what you have done, but I do feel that we in Springwater internally have My Springwater, and we have almost 3,000 people saying, please don't send me something extra. I think that needs to be taken into account. I think that the Springwater News, whether you choose to open it or not, and this might reflect poorly on me. However, I also think that there is a responsibility on the residents themselves. If you want information, you need to find it. And as a corporation, we do put information on our website, on our social media, and in our local newspaper. If you want information, it's there for you to find. I would love for there to be an app, and I can't wait for us to get to that point. I think that is going to be a game changer, as we saw with the Simcoe County app, with the County Collect or the County Connects. It's a great tool. We're just not there yet. However, to say that the Springwater News communication is not reaching the people that we on this table want it to reach, many of us sitting at this table chose to put ads in that paper during an election because we felt it reached you. We felt that it would get us elected to these seats to represent you. So now at this point, I'm sitting here, and while I definitely agree that we need to do more, every door that I knocked on, every person I've talked to is saying, I'm not hearing from you. I'm not getting communication in the way that I want to get it. But removing one stream of communication, I never heard from someone, I want less communication. So while remaining in the Springwater News, while we figure out how we can move forward and how we can do more, I'm open to that. But to remove something where I've heard councillors Moore and Thompson suggested with supporting our local businesses, and I know Ms. Shutt, you have a local business yourself that Springwater does support, 2 businesses, yes. I think that it's more than a paper. It is something, and I have yet, because we didn't go back to staff to ask for a more in-depth report on it. At this point, I would absolutely support a reconsideration of the decision. But I think that to remove all communications from the paper, then we're left with what? I've had people from outside our community, and while I do not represent people from Wyvale, and don't get me wrong, I represent you. I've had people from outside our community who say, I don't live in Springwater, but my kids go to school in Elmville, my kids play hockey in Elmville, and I work in Hillsdale. I rely on that paper to keep me connected, to know when I can sign my kids up from summer camps, when your market's going to be available, how I can bring my businesses, bring my money into Springwater. So I thank you for what you've done. I know it's not easy to do, and thank you to yourself and Ms. Stone. And at this time, I will be turning to Councillor Garwood, and I will come back to Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Ms. Shutt, thank you for being here this evening. Thank you for the delegation. I think, first of all, we should be highlighting that 617 number. I think that's absolutely incredible. It makes me proud to live in Springwater and live in the Elmville community. Since this decision was made, I've received 50 plus emails and phone calls, along with having had countless conversations with residents. Not one of these conversations were in support of moving away from the Springwater News services. I do share concerns regarding completely removing our presence in the paper. I've heard from many residents who reference the paper often and know folks throughout the municipality utilize the paper to determine what is happening within our community. I do agree with looking at alternative communications options to ensure that all residents receive information, but I do believe that the Springwater News has been an effective outlet not only for the Elmville community, but all of Springwater. I also want to mention many of the residents that I've heard from over the past few weeks were not from the Elmville community. They were from the Midhurst community. They were from the Hillsdale and Phelpston communities and the Minising communities, sharing their concerns and expressing their frustration. Now, there's been a lot of talk about the financial nature of this decision. And while we might not send out 2 mailers per month, I think it's only fair to compare apples to apples. Currently, we spend roughly $1,800 per month with the Springwater News. If we were to go with a mailer as discussed at the May 3rd meeting, 12,000 pieces at a cost of roughly $1,300 plus tax, this plus the cost of $2,000 to mail it, this equals roughly $3,300 per mail out. Right now, we are only spending $1,800 for the entire month in the Springwater News. So we would be tripling, if not 4 times the cost if we compared apples to apples, which we often do, which I often do when making decisions. Now, Officer Audette, one of our staff members, also noted in an email to council dated May 15th, an overall additional time as well. It's also staff time to send out these mailers. This staff time and mileage would cost $413 per edition time that is allotted as well, and taking away from her work in regards to other communication aspects within our community. So in closing, you all put us in these seats. So I think we need to listen to you. 617 people, that's a lot of folks. So let's improve services and not remove them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garwood. I next have Deputy Cabral.
Thank you. And I don't think I'm going to talk about the communications officer and work that she may do. She already does works to prepare the Springwater link. That's almost akin to suggesting that the mechanic now has to provide detailed billing because we bought an extra loader. So I struggle with that one. But the one point I want to kind of bring to everybody's attention, I think this is only fair for everybody to understand, is that the procurement policy that Springwater Township has and many other municipalities specifically state that there shouldn't be preference given to local businesses. And there have been in the past. I could well imagine if somebody from the Barrie Advance came here and made a delegation and said, hey, since 2010, you've put everything into the Springwater News and you haven't given us an opportunity. And I can tell you that there are folks who live in Springwater who do work for the Barrie Advance. So that is something for us to think about. It's the same as us being told that you have to buy all of your recreational equipment and your grass cutting equipment from McLaren's because they happen to be a local supplier. It's the same as telling us as councillors that we must adhere to buying our heavy equipment and plow trucks from Curry's because they are in Springwater Township. It's the same as suggesting that for mechanical repairs that, you know, we only go to one particular garage for service when we have lots of mechanical garages within Springwater Township that would probably love to get that kind of work too. So I think we have to be very, very careful when we turn around and say, hey, we need to continue to put money into a particular vehicle because it's a local business. So I just want folks to understand that municipalities are very, very careful about this. And that's one of the reasons why I think that we're sitting here, is because that's one of the reasons why the policy likely does exist, is so that we don't run into situations where council's being forced to make a specific decision based on emotion and based on finances.
Thank you, Deputy Cabral, and noting that Ms. Shutt does own a mechanics facility within the township. I'm not going to put her on the spot with that, but to my knowledge, every time we need a truck repaired, every time we need a tire replaced, we don't go out for 3 bids. I understand that there are differences, and I also know that we do have sole sourcing and single sourcing options within the municipality. So I'm going to defer to CO Schmidt to maybe give us some background, and while understanding that the long-standing relationship between the Springwater News and this council far exceeds any of our tenure here. CO Schmidt, if you could just give us some insight to maybe how the relationship came to begin and the difference between single sourcing, sole sourcing, and needing to go to tender through our procurement bylaw.
Thank you, Mayor Coghlan, and through you to members of council. I'll do my best. I can't really speak to the relationship piece because it does predate me. So my understanding is it's a minimum probably of 10 to 15 years that the township has been working in partnership with the Springwater News. As it relates to the procurement bylaw, the deputy mayor is correct. There is a provision in there that does state no local preference, if you will. That said, there is a Schedule A within the procurement bylaw that speaks to exclusions. And within that schedule, it does speak to advertising, and advertising is a service that's excluded from the procurement bylaw. So it is essentially a service that can be procured. And if there is a local business that we prefer to use or that we could use and makes sense to use, we have the option to do so. Maybe I'll leave it at that. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any additional, Councillor Alexander?
Thank you, Mayor Coghlan. I just want to speak to the reasoning, and I have tried to answer the majority of emails that did come in. First of all, thank you so much, Cindy. I think it's amazing that there's this much involvement. It's great to see community engagement. We don't see it often. So when people are passionate about something and willing to come and sit and listen and sign petitions, I truly think it's a great thing. My stance on this, when this originally came up, the options, which I just want to point out that all of council, I'm fairly certain unanimously said, let's look at our communication options and have staff come back to us with a number of options, not just what we're doing status quo. So when that originally came, my thought going into it was I was going to split between Springwater News and the Barrie Advance. I had heard a lot that although the Springwater News is absolutely delivered to the south end, the readership isn't the same. And we weren't reaching those residents. So I thought that was a good compromise. I then started talking to people about the Barrie Advance, actually, because I'm like, I don't get it. I don't understand why I don't get it, but my neighbor does. And so I started to reach out to a whole bunch of people, and it was no rhyme or reason. And how that conversation morphed, which was not at all me leading, was that pretty much every single person I talked to said, I don't read newspapers anymore. And then I had a couple other conversations with other residents, again, about separate issues. And that kept coming up. And I felt like I couldn't figure out why I was fighting for something that I felt the majority of people that I spoke with, and I know Councillor Garwood has spoken to different people, and we all speak to different people, but I just felt that I was fighting for something that the people that I was speaking with didn't want or didn't read. In terms of the direct mail, I think as much as I'm all on board for an app, I absolutely think it's the future and the way to go. We can't have no written communication. In my mind, not for the next probably 5 to 10 years. There are a lot of people that don't have cell phones or have flip phones that don't understand how this stuff works. I think we have to have a written communication presence because it is our responsibility to try our best to reach every resident. And I feel like the direct mail option is something to try. I am hopeful that if it's from the Township of Springwater, people will open it and try and read it. The fact that Councillor Moore, with 30 or almost 40% of the population of Springwater, didn't get one complaint, that makes me feel like our current method isn't working and we have to do better. And I'm not saying the direct mail is going to work. Maybe it won't. But from my perspective, it is a viable option to try, and we can't just continue with status quo when we're hearing over and over again, status quo isn't working.
Thank you, Councillor Alexander. I did have a hand up from Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, just back to the through the chair to CAO Smith, back to the procurement bylaw. Would this not fall under sole source and single sourcing?
CEO Schmidt.
Through you, Mayor Coughlin, to Councillor Thompson. Councillor Thompson, it could, but as I'd mentioned, based on our current procurement bylaw, it's actually excluded. The service is excluded from that bylaw. So essentially the provisions of that bylaw and then the no local preference piece is null and void, if you will. A sole source perspective, a single source, I didn't explain that earlier, I'll do my best. Sole source is essentially, it's a service that's provided in the area and nobody else provides it. Nobody else provides it probably in the province of Ontario, if you will, from a sole source. So you are essentially walking the path of entering into an agreement with one company that provides for that service. Single source is a little bit different, whereby there could be multiple businesses that provide for that service, but the township makes the decision through council to provide for that single source procurement, if you will. You make that decision that you're only going to go to that single source provider, although there's others that do provide for that same service. So hopefully that clarifies.
And follow on.
And follow on. Also, just to the question of Stone Manor Woods, that would be Ward 4. Because I think that we all got at least one email from somebody in Stone Manor Woods, and I know that I got at least one phone call. So, and I know many of the emails that I got, they didn't really list their address as to where they were from. I know some did. I wish they all had of, but so it's quite possible there could have been others in Ward 4 that were on that email list.
And before I do move to my comments, Councillor Moore does have her hand up.
Oh, thank you very much. Just to reply to that, what I said was I did not receive a direct phone call or a direct email or a text message directed to me. We all received council mail. But I want to make a second point too, and it goes back to the election piece. And I advertised in the Springwater News a lot. I started early and I was in there regularly every week, I think, or every edition, sorry. And I think as well as my opponent who ran against me was in the Springwater News too. We had the least voter turnout of the entire township. Most population, least turnout. And I don't want to think that that's apathy. I really don't. I think that they just weren't engaged. And I think we need to do a better job of making people aware that they live in Springwater Township and this is what's going on.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. And before I do move to Councillor Fisher, I wholeheartedly agree. Engaging residents is something we've all heard and we continue to hear. I will repeat. When it comes to a direct mailer, I think we can look to our internal numbers whereby 1,400 homes have chose not to have direct mail. So double that. If we're talking people, when you have a petition or a survey, often a husband and wife or those living in the home will sign it. So if we can double that, to me, the direct mail, and I want to separate the issues. I want to separate the Springwater News from our option of direct mailing and one replacing the other. I personally do not feel that a direct mailer is going to reach any more people than the Springwater News already is. And if we're hearing from an exorbitant amount of residents that are saying, I want to hear you in the Springwater News, I don't see why we couldn't keep ourselves in the Springwater News. And if we want to invest more money in other options, and much like the county's app or an online presence or whatever it is, because no two people receive their information in the same way. People have different preferences. But again, I will stress to the residents and those here, as much as people are saying, I don't hear from the township, there's also communication is a two-way street. There is a responsibility on our residents to look for the information, whether it's on the website, on social media, or in the newspaper. So I don't want to take that away, but I think that there's, as much as the onus is being put on us to communicate with you, the avenues in which we are communicating are well known. So if you want to know what's happening in Springwater, engage with one of those forms of communication. So as much as I know that I can't walk around with a spoon and spoon feed everybody information, I think that there is an opportunity here, but we are hearing that we want more. And I think more doesn't mean more pages in the Springwater Noon or news or more direct mailers. It's a different form of media. Our social media is great. I think that it's at the height that it can be with the manpower that we have behind it. I think that an app and generating that will really lift the township in that direction. In my opinion, moving from a page in the Springwater News, which is in the same mailbox at the same time, the same information, to a direct mailer, I don't see that being any more of benefit. If you want to know what's happening, you can either open an envelope or open a paper. The information's already there. I did see Councillor Fisher had his hand up.
Thank you, Mayor. I will actually agree with you. I think that the onus does lay with the resident quite often. Often they need to open up the paper, or in this case, receive the direct mailer and read it. So when I'm hearing that it'll simply go in the recycling box, that doesn't carry much weight with me. If you receive an envelope that's addressed from Springwater, I think that naturally you would open it and read it. I think it's a better way of communicating with people. When I hear that nearly 1,400 people are asking to go paperless, well, I would argue that those people, out of 1,400 homes, by the way, out of over 11,000 homes, I would argue that those people are probably doing it for environmental reasons, and they probably aren't getting or want the paper anyway. As for the petition, nearly 700 people, although I think it's great, we have over 20,000 people in Springwater who didn't sign the petition. This is not about the paper, as Anita said. This is about communication and improved communication in our area. One thing we all discussed when we got on council, and I think you'll all agree, was we heard at the doors of the people we campaigned to that communication was an issue. And when our sole source really right now is the Springwater paper, I think we need to change something. I do firmly believe that a direct mailer is the way to go. It's certainly worth going to it for the interim. And I do agree that in 5 or 10 years, when the older population, is unfortunately no longer around, we could go into a more digital platform. But for right now, I believe the direct mailer is the way to go. Sorry?
And I appreciate the jeers, and I do not think that was the intent of Counselor Fisher. I just think that his intent was, and I don't want to speak for you. Community, you were waiting for people to die off.
Oh.
Yeah, that's not what you were intending. What I think you were saying is that communication continues to evolve with our community, and we need to evolve with it. But at the same time, taking something away from a demographic. So we are entirely acknowledging that there is a demographic of people who enjoy the paper for much more than the spring water link. Like, we're not the driving force to that, like where the yard sales are and whose birthday it is might be that. But what I'm saying is that I think that opening an envelope myself, and to be honest, I haven't signed up for the paperless, and I should note that there are 9,798 tax rolls, and of that 1,453 homes have chose to be paperless. They do not want an envelope coming to their home. We could do more communication to let people know, because I myself have not signed up for that. I don't want, I chuck it out, and for sure. The paper itself, and it depends. It depends on if I have time. It depends on if there's something I'm looking for. It all depends. But if there is something I'm looking for, whether it's signing my kids up for a camp, I know where to go. I go find the paper, I open it. If I don't have it, if it's already been used, and I mean this with no disrespect, it starts many bonfires for us. And I genuinely appreciate taking it up to the cottage. It's there. If I'm looking for the information, I know where to go to find it. And I've heard from people, it's easier to find it in the paper than on the website. That is out there. And I do see your hand, Ms. Shutt. I will come back to you. What I'm hearing, and I've heard throughout this and from you in our community, is there isn't one answer. There isn't one solution to communicating with our diverse population. However, I have heard from those who do read the Springwater News saying, keep it. Just keep it. And I'm wondering if, rather than taking it out of the Springwater News and replacing that with a direct mailer while we evolve an app, and I'm hoping that we can move in that direction, if we remain in the Springwater News, and whether it's in a reduced fashion so that we have more financial, whichever, to put towards the app, I'm willing to walk that path. If we're looking to make sure that the direct messaging is still in the paper, but we are wholeheartedly, let's move forward with this. So we have people that look for the paper can open the paper, and people who want the push notifications on their phone, that's there too. So I'm just saying that I think that the decision that we have made, we've heard from the residents, we need to reconsider. And I have my clerk pointing over at CEO Schmidt, and then I did have Ms. Shutt. CEO Schmidt. We do have question period following this, and at that time we will have questions. CEO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Just to clarify a comment that was made around the table, just so everybody's clear, the direct mailer isn't intended to be in an envelope and privately addressed to the homeowner. It's just a flyer. So there is no, just to be clear, that there is no envelope, if you will, that'll be, unless of course council directs us to do that.
Thank you, CEO Schmidt. I was picturing like myself with one of those large envelope openers going to that, but I will move to Ms. Shutt now, and then I will come back to council for final comments. Ms. Shutt.
Oh, I just thought it was an envelope, so I'm like, and my other one is, your website's terrible. I'm sorry.
That's a whole other conversation for a whole other delegation. Please feel free to come back at our next meeting with a delegation about our website, and we will deal with it at that time. But council, if there's any further conversation or comments from Ms. Shutt, I will let her return to her seat. Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I think what I was hearing was that you start your campfires with your water bill.
I'm on a well.
That's right. And there's a fire ban, Mayor Coughlin.
Noted.
Just kidding. Anyway, my final comments are, again, when I think about making decisions, you know, we We reconsider things all the time. We bring motions forward and advocate for things at this table when one member of our community comes forward. And we have 617, whether they are all residents of Springwater or not. Regardless, they find the Springwater News important enough to sign a petition. Now, when I think about what I can't get over is I can't get over how it can't be about the money. Again, I'm not going to go through the financials specifically here, but to me, we've had longer conversations over $1,000 at this table. And we're spending many, many times that. So again, that is my concern. And I also have concern with the timeline around a direct mailer. I know when the Springwater News is coming to my mailbox. It'll be there on Wednesday or Thursday of every other week, roughly. I know that I can guarantee that I will find out what's happening in my community. Heck, I use it. And I sit on council and I use it to find events in the community where I can go to. And that's not from the township, that's from what members of the community submit. So again, part of what Councillor Fisher said, I agree with in regards to change, evolving, and looking at alternative options. I've never shied away from that. I agree with, I think, everyone up here. We heard it at the door this past year that folks want better communication. I agree. Let's do better, but I don't think this is better.
Thank you. If there's no further comments from members of council at this time, oh, sorry. Receiving, yes. May I have a mover and seconder to receive the delegation from Cindy Shutt? I have Councillor Garwood and Deputy Cabral that the delegation from Cindy Shutt regarding a resident petition to keep the communication in Springwater Township now be received. Are there any further questions or discussion? And seeing none, all those in favor? And that has carried. Thank you. I was going to offer you to go back to your seat, but you're already there. At this time, my apologies to the clerk's department would be great. Thank you. At this time, I will ask, this is now question period. If there are members of the public invited to speak and ask questions or make comments regarding an item on the agenda, questions on the agenda are at the discretion of the chair. In order to accommodate the registration process for oral presentation, submissions will be accepted until 12 p.m. on the day of the meeting. In accordance with the procedural bylaw, the first 5 submissions will be accepted in order that they are received on the first come first served basis with a total of 10 minutes per delegation. Clerk Ainsworth, have there been any submissions received?
Thank you. There have been 3 submissions received. 2 are in person and 1 I will be reading the submission. The first is from Glenn Ampleford. Mr. Ampleford, if you can join council at the front desk, you do have 2 minutes to pose your comment or question.
Welcome, Glenn. If you can
Good
just
evening.
pull them in, thank you. Appreciate it.
Good evening, council. My name is Glenn Ampleford. I live at 54 Dorn Road in Midhurst, so I'm a taxpayer in Springwater. My question pertains to the complete lack of effectiveness in this council and its administrative staff's approach to this issue. We've sat through an hour of circular debate, this time and the same time last council meeting on May 3rd. Today is June 7th. We still do not have any cost analysis. There is apparently not even clarity of what product is going to be distributed to the township's residents. Councillor Fisher was expecting an envelope. The administrator indicated it's just a flyer. We do not have any supporting cost analysis from the township staff. Every councillor here is guessing as to what the costs might be, could be, what they think it might be based on what product it could be, but no one has any clarity about what is happening here. There is no plan. There's no research. There's a complete lack of market research here. What I've heard again tonight, as we heard in the last council meeting, was I talked to some people. I didn't hear from anyone. That's not research. That's hearsay. If anyone has any idea about what evidence is. The decision that was made on May 3rd to cancel the advertising in the Springwater News was made without any evidence about what the cost might be or what the effectiveness might be of making a change. So when you are talking about spending $60,000 incrementally at a time of economic hardship and inflation for a lot of people who are struggling to put food on the table, has anyone seen the lines at the food banks recently? And we're talking about blowing 60 grand on mailing flyers out? Are you kidding me? This is embarrassing. There's no
30 seconds.
research that would support a measured increase in communication effectiveness. I'd love to see some. Please explain to me how a decision of this dollar amount could be contemplated without cost benefit analysis by township staff. I'd further like council to explain how this example of failed decision making contrasts to the sworn oaths that each one of you got up in front of residents and made in November, which I quote, to faithfully and impartially exercise this office to the best of your ability. I struggle to see how the decision made on May 3rd could possibly have met this threshold of fiduciary responsibility for taxpayer resources. I would further like council
Unfortunately,
to
gonna have to
explain
cut
why,
you off at
as a
this
taxpayer, I should not be concerned in light of this event regarding council stewardship of the much larger
Mr.
township
Ampliford, if we
budget.
can, I do apologize. That was the
That's
2
it.
minutes and I apologize. Yes, it's not that I want to cut you off, but I do have a procedural bylaw that I need to follow.
Thank
So
you.
thank you very much for your question. I will turn to council now if there's any questions for Mr. Ampliford. And I have Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mr. Appleford. I appreciate you coming through, Mayor Coughlin to you. I just want to let you know, this isn't the first time that this has happened since I've been on council. Back in February of 2021, the same issue came up then. The only difference this time around is we had more opportunity to look at different ways to communicate. And as far as not knowing what the cost might be, I have to disagree with you on a personal level, sir. I do know what the cost might be because I utilized direct mail during the campaign. And I would suspect that there may be other councillors on here that also did so. So from my standpoint, sir, I don't see the $80,000 at all. And that's where I based my information on, is on my own personal experience, Mr. Ampliford. But I do appreciate your comments, sir.
Council, are there any other questions? Councillor Fisher?
Thank you, Mr. Ampliford. Again, going back to what I said before, it's about communication and improved communication. There will always be a dollar figure attached to it. However, I do believe that even if it is incrementally more, we do owe it to the taxpayers of every ward in Springwater to communicate with them more effectively. Staying with the status quo, I know we've all discussed this, does not fulfill that for all of our residents. So I do want to move to direct mailing.
Thank you, Mr. Ampliford. And before I do move on to the next question, at the discretion, I'm just going to not look at Renee Clerk Ainsworth while I say this. I do appreciate that. And while I believe that as individual members, we all do our own homework and we all come up with our own information, I do think it's very important that we receive staff reports with information that we can all divulge through with that information in front of the public. So while many members have an idea of what it would cost, I do agree that there should be a report that follows. So thank you. I will be moving on to the next question. Thank you. Clerk Ainsworth, thank you for not tapping me. And do we have another submission?
Thank you. The next submission is from Linda Belcourt. If you could please join council.
Thank you, Ms. Belcourt. And if you can just pull both microphones close to you. And as a reminder, there is 2 minutes, so I will be giving you like a 30-second warning, and then I will, as I did for Mr. Ampliford, be cutting you off.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to come here to speak to you. I'm not coming here to plea financially for the Springwater News. I'm actually here because I have huge engagement from the community, and I've been flooded with people, readers, residents, angry. They're upset that the link is no longer being printed in the Springwater News. I've never heard such anger from people. So I do represent a lot of the community because I am very, very engaged. I know that the votership was really, really low. But my readership is very, very high. Now, we can all personally take our own experience to say, I've talked to the people in my ward that don't read the paper. So I'm really here just to show you the facts. I'm so nervous.
Try sitting
So
in
there
this
is,
seat.
try sitting in your seat. There is no way to know the readership of a newspaper. It's just not possible. Everybody that's in marketing knows this. Everybody who's in business knows this. My 50 advertisers know my advertising works because their customers tell them. I've now been in, the Springwater News has now been in business for 25 years. So people do read the paper. It's still financially viable. That proves that people are in there. So some of the facts that I have are on my website. Undisputable. Nobody's making it up. No one's is. The facts are, the link is a PDF on my website. The township link gets per month 6,194 hits through my website. So you can imagine other people are reading it. So if you don't advertise in my paper, it's not going to be on my website. So I have tons of website stats here. I also have
Ms.
stats.
Belcourt, if there's a direct question for council, that has been 2 minutes. So I'm going to ask at this time if there's a question for council. If you could ask that, it has been 2 minutes.
I'm just not sure why you think people don't read my paper. I have the facts in front of me. My website is almost twice as popular as the township website because I got the stats from the township, and my website has twice the hits per month. So if the link is not in here, it's not going to be online. The facts are 6,194 people will not read the township information. That's just one area. So you can imagine in print and the
Thank you, Ms.
engagement
Belcourt.
from the.
I do
official-
apologize. This is like one of the worst parts of this job, but I do apologize. I do need to adhere to the procedural bylaw. So at this
Yeah.
time, I will move to council. If there's any questions at this time for Ms. Belcourt. And not seeing any questions. Thank you very much for your submission. And at this time, we do actually have a third, which will be read by the clerk, to my understanding. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Clerk Ainsworth, at this time, are there any other submissions during question period?
Thank you. There has been a submission from Dave Spring of 2451 County Road 92, and he has requested that I read it on his behalf. And he states the original agreement for the shared use facility at Elmvale District High School that the community fundraised for needs to be honored. This should be treated no differently than wanting to book a current facility like the Menacing Hall. Call the township and book it if it's available. Turning this over to the school board is not in the best interest of the community. Utilize the current agreement and make this building available to the community as originally intended.
Thank you, Clerk Ainsworth. Are there any members of council who would wish to speak to that? I have Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Actually, I think it's coming up later on.
Okay, we can address it at that time. Are there any members of the gallery this evening that would like to have an oral submission? Please do come forward. And at this time, I'd ask that you state your name and address, please, for the clerk. And pull the microphones, yes. Glad you were paying attention.
Heidi McElwain, 1434 Floss Road 7 East. I'm a resident of the Township of Springwater. Been hearing a lot of opinions up here about what the right way is to get the word out to the municipality. So I guess my question is, you're already sending out a direct mailer. It's called the Springwater News, and it gets in all of our mailboxes every 2 weeks. The Barrie Advance Storage does not come to my house or anybody else on Floss Road 7 East. Not sure why. I know it comes into Elmvale because it's broken my boys' snow blowers a few times at the end of the laneway. In fact, there was an Elmvale community page submission went around this winter for people who giving them the information to contact the newspaper to stop delivery for that very reason. But what I would like to ask of you guys, if you're so convinced that a direct mailer works, and maybe it will, who knows? Send your first one out with a survey. Ask the people. Survey Monkey, get them to come in with a response. Is this the preferred method of communication for the Township of Springwater for you? If it is, carry on. If it's not, the Springwater News, as far as a lot of people are concerned, 6,100 and some every month, and 600 and some that signed a petition, clearly they think it's working. So I think that that would be a great way for you guys to test your theory.
Thank you, Ms. McWayne. And before you do leave, are there any members of council that would like to? No, she's gone. She gone. She gone. No, that's fine. That's fine. You actually don't have to acknowledge her, but if we do have any, yeah. Deputy Cabral, just a comment.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Just a comment, and I do thank you for that. Back in February of 2021, when this came before council at that time.
And
well,
through the
there were-
chair, Ms. McWayne, we will go through the chair to Deputy
Sorry.
Cabral. That's
Through-
not a
through you,
problem.
Mayor
Through
Coughlin,
the
was that
chair.
a different council than the one that was up here today who's making this decision?
That is correct,
As far
yes.
as I'm concerned, it's
And-
not relevant.
Well, then I won't carry any further, but you did make a comment regarding the Barrie Advance, and I was just relating back to that date because on that particular date, the only choices we had were the Barrie Advance and the Springwater News. And I pushed extremely hard for the Springwater News back then. And at that time, it was 4-3 to keep the Springwater News. And I'm only bringing that up because I was in the same boat as you. The Barrie Advance wasn't available to me. However, the Barrie Advance is available to me. It's available to anybody in Springwater Township if you want to go and grab it. And I grab mine regularly. As a matter of fact, it's usually there on my way home from these meetings. So I'm just letting you know that it is available, and it's available in boxes in Elmville as well. So that's the only point.
We've actually muted your microphone, Ms. McWayne, and I apologize, but those, if you would like to respond to Deputy Cabral's, if you can put that on, thank you.
Yeah, I remember being at a meeting that, in fact, I was perplexed because it was over at the church in Midhurst many, many, many years ago, when the township at the time was trying to explain to the community what was going to be happening, as we can all see with the huge development here, what was going to be happening in their communities and giving people the chance to try and give some input as to how they would like that to look many, many years down the road. I don't know if any of you guys were there, but it was literally one massive complaint about that newspaper and how everybody in the village of Midhurst could stop it being delivered to the ends of their laneway because they were tired of it junking things up and them finding it in the snow, with the snowbanks at the end of the season. Like, I don't know if anybody was there, but it was incredible. The whole meeting turned to that. There was no progress made as to people's thoughts about development whatsoever. So I don't think it matters what you do. You're not going to get it perfect. But if you do think the direct mailer is the way to go, let's ask the question. Do a survey in your first one and see what kind of response you get.
Thank you. And maybe a 10% coupon on taxes.
Or free
If you return that, it might actually entice people to do so. But thank you, Ms. McWayne, for your comments. And I do agree that whether it's the Barrie Advance, whether it's a direct mailer, or whether it's the Springwater News, the onus is on the individual to seek the information and to search for the information. And there has been a longstanding history with this is where the information is. Whether it's opening one newspaper, opening another newspaper, maybe not an envelope or just a mailer. I think that becomes the question this evening. So thank you very much for your engagement and being here with us this evening. Are there any further questions from the gallery at this time? We do have, I can only take one more question, so you'll have to battle each other on the way up to the microphones. Is there any further questions? Oh, we do have one.
Yes, it's John Hawthorne, 3802 Horseshoe Valley Road West. I have this one concern that the Elmville paper is local, whereas the Barrie Advance is owned by the Toronto Star system. And I really feel it should be an independent situation. My other concern is if people, because we're on a busier road, so when the snowplows go by, they really blast the snow. Now, a piece of paper, quite often, our mail gets wet, and a single piece of paper, I'm really concerned what's going to happen to that in the winter time without an envelope or something to protect it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Council, I did see another hand. We do have an option at this point to waive our procedural bylaw to allow the additional member of the, I think if they're here and they would like to speak at this time, I would like to have someone at this table propose a motion to waive our procedural bylaw at this time, or Clerk Ainsworth, if it's just, oh, as chair, I can just do that. So welcome. Thank you very much. If I can have your name and address, please.
Thank you for including me. My name is Laureen Larsh. I live at 1209 Seaton and I am in Ward 4 Councillor Moore's area. I did not send an email because I signed the petition and I came here tonight instead. I'm a little late to the game in terms of I wasn't here in 2021 to find out what was happening, but could we not do a hybrid? Could we not reduce the section? Because sometimes I know it's 2 pages, sometimes it's 1 page. Could we not do a half page or a 3/4 page, maybe smaller font, whatever? I think that we are going to exclude a large percentage of our population that's senior, that isn't dead yet. And as of Shoppers Drug Mart tomorrow, I am part of that senior community. I enjoy my Springwater News. I always read it. And to be honest, one of the first things I go to is the Springwater link. I'm web savvy. I have every app going, but I still read the newspaper. So I'm just saying a hybrid to me makes sense. The world is about compromise. Business is about compromise. Support local, compromise. Do maybe a little less mail or direct and continue to do the Springwater News. That's my question and suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Larsh. Are there any comments or questions for Ms. Larsh? And seeing none at this time, we'll move on from question, Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. With nothing on the floor, I'm tabling a reconsideration regarding the decision to end the municipality services in the Springwater News.
And at this point, I will turn and ask for a seconder and then move to Clerk Ainsworth. I would need a seconder for that to be on the floor, Councillor Thompson, and I will move to Clerk Ainsworth.
Thank you. The reconsideration would read that resolution C263C 2023 from May 3rd, 2023 regarding communications options be hereby reconsidered. And this requires a vote without debate or comment.
Councillor Thompson.
Could I request a recorded vote?
Clerk Ainsworth.
Thank you. A recorded vote has been requested. If you vote yes, that means you would like to see this item reconsidered and back on the table. If you vote no, you are not requesting that this item be brought forward. When I state your name, please state yes or no. Councillor Garwood.
Yes.
Councillor Alexander.
No.
Councillor Thompson.
Yes.
Councillor Moore.
No.
Councillor Fisher.
No.
Deputy Mayor Cabral.
No.
Mayor Coughlin.
Yes.
That reconsideration is lost.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for being here with us. I will take a quick pause as I'm sure the audience may not have a significant interest in the rest of the evening. So if you would like to exit, you may do so. We don't take offense to it. But thank you for being here with us. At this time, I'll move on to our minutes. May I have a mover and seconder to approve the minutes of council? I have Alexander and Deputy Cabral that the minutes of council listed herein be as approved as presented. Minutes of the special meeting of council on May 10th, 2023. Minutes of the regular meeting of council, May 17th, 2023, and minutes of the special meeting of council, May 31st, 2023. Are there any questions or comments on those minutes? And seeing none, all those in favor? And that has carried. We will now move on to boards and committees. May I have a mover and seconder for the minutes of boards and committees? I have Fisher and Moore. That the minutes of the boards and committee of the other organizations listed herein be received for information. Minutes of the Cultural and Heritage Advisory Committee meeting of February 22nd, 2022, and minutes of the Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting of April 2023. And I do apologize, it was February 22nd, 2023. I misspoke. Are there any questions or comments on these minutes? And seeing none, all those in favor? And that has carried. We are now moving on to a deferred item, which is the winter maintenance. May I have a mover and seconder to update the winter maintenance of Old Second Road on Sutton Heights? Councilors Fisher and Moore, that the report from the senior engineering technologist regarding the update on the winter maintenance of Old Second South beyond Sutton Height dated May 17, 2023 be received, and that council endorse the original staff recommendation from the April 19th, 2023 report, namely the road resurface remain as is, and that staff be directed to move forward with a trial use of a 4x4 pickup truck for the winter maintenance on this stretch of roadway. And at this time, I will move to Councillor Fisher.
I'd like to defer this item with Mahesh being away on vacation and a few parties not being available. I'd like to defer this until September so we can get more information to make an accurate choice.
Thank you, Councillor Fisher. And I'll just remain to Clerk Ainsworth for the procedure on a second deferral, please.
Thank you. There is no restriction on a second deferral.
Thank you. Council at this time, I would just need a seconder for Councillor Fisher's deferral. I have Deputy Mayor Cabral for a deferral again, and council, all those in favor? And the deferral has carried. We will now move on to action reports. May I have a mover and seconder to approve the action reports? At this time, I will ask if there's any that need to be pulled. Any specific items? I do have Councillor Moore.
Could we please pull 8.7?
Council, are there any additional items to be pulled at this time? And seeing none, may I have a mover and seconder for the remaining reports? Deputy Cabral and Councillor Garwood, that action items 8.2 through 8.6 be received with the exception of 8.7, that recommendations contained therein be approved as presented. 8.2, 4712 County Road 90 security reduction. 8.3 award tender 2023-24 IOS Springwater Water Tank 2023 maintenance project. 8.4 ZB 2023-009 K Stebbins. 8.5 SU 2008-001 Redline revision for Elmville Village Phase 2. 8.6 internal completion of the grant application, international competition grant application 2023-01. Are there any further comments on those? And seeing none, all those in favor? And that has carried. And at this time, I will move to Councillor Moore to move the Edenvale Conservation Area Agreement and look for a seconder. Councillor Fisher has seconded. At this time, Councillor Moore, I'll move to you for comment first.
Thank you very much. I didn't realize when I read the agreement that we had such an agreement in place and for so long, 20 years with the NVCA managing or us managing the park for them. So I was looking for some idea of the usage. How do we know that the agreement we're getting into now is beneficial to the township? I know it's changing, but is there a usage at the park? Is there any way to collect any sort of data on that?
I will defer to CEO Schmidt for comment, and I do see Manager Dean is on screen as well. CEO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Maybe I'll start and Manager Dean can maybe tag along here. To my understanding, there is, sorry, it's for you, Mayor Coughlin, to Councillor Moore. To my knowledge, there is no real way right now per se to look at utilization. Obviously, word of mouth, I think it is a very popular site, if you will. My understanding is the agreement that we're currently in, the township is essentially providing the resources, equipment, people to go ahead and maintain the property on behalf of the NVCA. Essentially, this new agreement would flip that, whereby the NVCA would now take on responsibility for the maintenance. So no more cost for the township to be able to maintain that property. Going forward, I believe they're also looking at installing a ticketing system parking, if you will, similar to, I believe, their Tiffin Conservation Area, where I think it's a kind of a mobile app that you can pay for parking. So that in itself might be able to provide for some information or statistics regarding usage. But beyond that, I'm not sure of any. And maybe I'll defer to Manager Dean if she has anything else to provide.
And thinking before I do move to Manager Dean, I do know that our Willow Landing site does have that ticketing through the NVCA, which is a lot of the in. So that's where people park, but a lot of the out is at our secondary location. So I don't know how to gauge that. But I am interested to know as well. Manager Dean?
Thank you, Mayor Colgan, for yourself and to the rest of council. So that's correct. Currently, there's no statistics on the usage for Edenvale, as it's not a monitored site. Staff attend it for grass cutting, for grading the driveway, dust controls, issues with the ramp. So any grading issues or fixing of the boat ramp in and out. We supply porta potties there and garbage removal frequently throughout the spring, summer, and fall season. It is a heavily used site. Anytime I visited or by phone calls we receive, there is lots of different groups that use it. For example, Eagles Adventure uses it as their main location for kind of launching their non-motorized boats. And we do at the beginning of the year receive a lot of phone calls from kind of area codes all over, just wondering, when it's going to open, has the water levels gone down, and questions of such. And then in terms of the parking system, that's correct. The Fort Willow does currently have the MVCA parking system in place at it. So whether you park there to go in and out of Fort Willow, or you park there to go in at Fort Willow and out somewhere else, you would pay there. So anyone that wanted to enter the gates at Edenvale, potentially in the future, if MVCA does move that way, that's where that gate would be.
Thank you, Council. Are there any follow-on questions for Manager Dean or CEO Schmidt? And seeing none, all those in favor? And that has carried. And Council, before we do move on to our next items, we've been asked for a quick bio break. So if we can just take 5 minutes and return. Thank you very much. And reconvening council, may I have a mover and seconder to receive the information reports in item 9.1? Councilors Thompson and Garwood, that the report items listed herein be received for information, short-term rental accommodations, temporary outdoor patio program, zoning bylaw amendment, ZB 2023-10, P 1010 Beaver Lane, official plan update, and 5 Elmvale District High School agreement. Are there any that we wish to pull to speak to? I have Councillor Moore.
Number 1, please, short-term rental accommodations.
Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I'd like to pull number 2, temporary outdoor patio program, and number 5, Elmvale District High School agreement update. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any additional items, council? So seeing none, we will be, as a consent agenda, we will be approving items 3 and 4. So that the report, I do have a mover and seconder, the report list items listed herein be received for information. Items 3, zoning bylaw amendment, ZB 2023-10, and official plan review update. All those in favor? And that has carried. Thank you, council. I will now move to item 1, the short-term rental accommodations, pulled by Councillor Moore, moved by Councillor Moore, seconded by, if I can have a seconder, please, Councillor Fisher. And I will turn to Councillor Moore for comment.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. First, I'll say thank you to Brittany Kellington for completing the report. It wasn't exactly as what I was expecting. I was expecting just to have the creation of the policy and the bylaw. I really wasn't expecting to have the other piece and then the final recommendation that we don't create a bylaw. So that was a bit of a surprise. So points I'd like to make are, when I was at Roma, I attended the short-term accommodation breakout session. And I heard from the Township of Tiny, Fort Lakes, and I don't know who that is that he? Or as well as the more eastern side or western side, sorry, of the province. Each giving their perspective on the short-term accommodations and the challenges that they had. And truly, to make a long story short, what rectified those challenges was putting bylaws in place. And they don't need to be really complicated and really strict, but they do need to have parameters. And they could be as simple as 3-night minimum stays, or registered and then pay taxes like you do for a hotel stay. Because truly, these short-term accommodations are getting away with tax evasion. So I wasn't asking for really, and I realize that our numbers are very low, and thank you for pointing that out. The numbers are low, but I do think it's important to get ahead of it. I've been on council long enough to know that we run into problems when we don't have bylaws in place for certain things. And I'll quote this sign bylaw to start with, and CCAN's secondly, because if we had been in front of both of those things, we wouldn't have the issues that we do right now. So I think it's very important to put at least a simple bylaw in place. And I'm just going to look back here quickly because there are a couple of other things. I realize zoning might be an issue, enforcement mechanisms, health and safety. We could talk about health and safety too. I mean, really, if we are renting, they should be inspected. I believe they should be inspected by fire. Should they be primary residences only or not primary residences at all? So I think there are some questions that can be answered, and I would ask maybe that Supervisor Kellington go back, and I would be happy to help, and I would come in and sit in on part of a committee, because I realize this is a very broad topic and there's a lot of moving parts. And I'd be happy to sit on a committee, a subcommittee, to look at creating a better policy.
Councillor Fisher?
I think we definitely need to be ahead of the curve in getting a bylaw in place for Springwater. I think often short-term rentals are seen as something that would be in a cottage area or a chalet area up near the mountain. But short-term rentals in basement dwellings and in homes are becoming quite popular, particularly in urban areas. With our expanding population and housing, I think we really do need to be ahead of it. Now, in a few of the studies I've read, we're having a housing crisis right now, and short-term rentals have actually been found to deplete that housing supply and much needed affordable housing supply. It's taking it out of the market. So when we talk about affordable housing, I think we need to realize that if we're not regulating short-term rentals, we're often taking that out of the market. They effectively become hotels versus rental units. Another thing, and I think one that maybe we're a little bit naive to here in Springwater, is the criminal activity that can often come in with them. I hate to talk about these sorts of things, but they are a reality where once they weren't. 20 years ago, you never would have talked about human trafficking in a place like Barrie. Right. I'll tell you this, when I was growing up, you wouldn't have even really talked about it in a place like Toronto. Right. But these things do come. And in my talks with members of law enforcement, this attracts them. It's a place to commit crimes, human trafficking, drug peddling. So I think it's something we need to really regulate. We need to license. We need to have longer term stays, maybe week-long stays or 5-day stays. We need to tax it. And we need to know exactly what's going on in our communities. So I think we shouldn't be naive, and we should not treat it as a cottage country problem, but maybe a more of an urban problem.
Council, any further comments on that? Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I guess from my standpoint, I know that in our particular area, a lot of the complaints were generated out of what we know as cottage country being Moore Lake, but that certainly doesn't preclude, as Councillor Fisher has indicated, those in the south end that are in a position to provide Airbnbs to folks that are coming to stay in the Barrie area and might find it quite desirable to be there because they don't really necessarily view it as, say, up in the north end. However, I think it's probably quite prudent to have something in place. I think if there was a violation, it would be like any other call. And from the numbers that were there, it doesn't really justify necessarily having an additional staff member, in my opinion. However, the other thing I think that it really would do is there should be a registration mechanism and inspections for them. And I think that there should be a registration fee. And as Councillor Fisher has indicated, some type of stay period so that it's not just party central on a Friday or Saturday night, so that they have to stay there for 3 or 4 days. Some folks won't want to pay for that just if they're going to party one night. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Before I move on to Councillor Fisher, I frequently reserve Airbnbs, and I will tell you next weekend I have an Airbnb in Niagara rented for 4 nights because that is the minimum, and it's $150 for the 4 nights. So there's no minimum price per night stipulated by Airbnb. So we can say that it has to be 40 nights in Springwater, but the owner can simply rent it. So if it's the 28 days is what I believe that the Canada Revenue Agency says is becoming, whichever those laws are. I think this is a huge issue. This isn't something that just one simple bylaw is going to fix, much like we saw with signs and we saw with CCANs. Not that we don't have sign bylaws or CCAN bylaws, but like everything in this municipality, as we grow, as we evolve, bylaws have to change, needs change. And sometimes we get things right, sometimes we get it wrong. This one in itself, I truly believe it comes down to enforcement. And MELO Kellington, while she's incredible, if we're not willing to thoroughly enhance our bylaw department, we're not going to have anybody that's available to respond to these issues. We already have noise bylaw, we have fire prevention, we have things in place to somewhat regulate what happens on private property. We also have, excitingly, in my opinion, in Orr Lake, on a commercial property, we have the Quiddy Viddy that is now a short-term, it's a rental. They've got a coffee hut and they're promoting Orr Lake and they're bringing visitors to it. So while I fully understand that there is a need for this, because I don't think anyone wants a 24/7 party in their backyard, unless it's your own party. I think we need to just, I think this is one that we need to take. It's not something we need to just rush to get in place. I think we need to do it right. I think we need to understand that if we are going to put something in place, the most important thing is having the enforcement behind it, because putting rules in place that we can't enforce seems kind of counterintuitive to me. I did see an additional hand at Councillor Thompson.
This topic came up at the recent Simcoe County conference at Rama, and I attended a workshop, and most of our surrounding municipalities have bylaws in place and they have fees. And it didn't take them very long. They've had to hire staff, obviously, to enforce the bylaws, and it didn't take very long for this to become revenue neutral. So this program won't be a cost to taxpayers, but I think it's a must. Just simple things like limiting the amount of people that can rent an Airbnb is like, you don't want, I've had complaints from residents where 50 people show up at their neighbor's house and enjoy the pool for the weekend and in a really nice neighborhood.
That wasn't me that rented it, just so you know. Councillor Moore.
Thank you. I just want to say that in one of the subdivisions in my ward, and particularly the houses that they built at the time were pretty luxury homes. And they made, say, 5 bedrooms with 5 en-suites. So each bedroom has an ensuite. And I can't tell you how many of those are rentals now, because they just built them like perfect for a rental Airbnb or VRBO, whatever it is. And so, and I think the other piece too, that we know the cars in our neighborhood, right? And I think Councillor Fisher mentioned this to me. We know the cars in our neighborhood. So we know when there's an odd vehicle that drives by. But in these subdivisions that are really, really tight, nobody knows, like nobody knows whose car is whose. And so a strange car or strange folks being there, it's kind of every day. So it's just a different environment. And I, for the safety of all the folks that live there too, I think it's important we have something in place.
Any other comments? Councillor Moore?
So I will now propose an amendment, please, that this go back to the clerk's office or Supervisor Kellington to have a relook and then come back to council. Is that?
Thank you. Clerk Ainsworth, we're looking for a draft policy at this point.
Yep.
Clerk Ainsworth.
Thank you. I have included some of the items based on the conversation. So what I have drafted so far is that staff be directed to draft a short-term rental accommodation bylaw that requires longer-term stays, minimum of 3 nights, inspection requirements, registration requirements, and the relevant application fees. Is there anything else that council would like to see as a requirement of the draft policy? From my understanding, council would like to see maybe a lesser complex bylaw than some of the bylaws that we see in our neighboring municipalities, but something at a minimum.
So if I could just include then the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives, they wrote a very good research-based article. If maybe I could ensure that that's reviewed because they've made great recommendations too, and I'll leave that with you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Councillor Thompson? And no further comment. And I think too that in this report that comes back to council, I would like to see the staffing component that could. And again, to me, there's no sense in putting anything in place if we're not willing to enforce it.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I know there's a lot of bylaws to enforce. Fact of the matter is, I think we should be looking at the number of calls that they actually attend, not necessarily the number of bylaws that they're responsible for. A bylaw could sit there for months on end and never have a complaint. This one could sit for months on end and never have a complaint. So I think looking at staffing should be something that should come up during the budget deliberations, and that should be something that comes from the bylaw department itself. So I wouldn't necessarily support including looking at additional staffing at this point in time.
And I thank you, Deputy Cabral, and I apologize for misinterpreting what I'm saying. If there is a component with this, if this is coming forward, understanding that September is going to be here in no time, November is going to be here in no time, this bylaw is going to come back before us, and I would like to be prepared for the budget. So if there is if there is no complaints, we don't have a bylaw in place, so there's going to be minimal complaints, but I don't see having information whether, even if it's from other municipalities, what it takes in Oro, what it takes in Clearview, I don't want to go to Wasaga Beach and Tiny because I figure that's not relative to us. I think that Lake, I think we're unique. I don't think we can look to Tiny and Wasaga Beach for ARU or for these short-term rentals. I would just like that information. Follow on, Deputy Brown.
Thank you. I just want to clarify with respect to some of the other locations. You're absolutely right. We don't equate with them. We don't have high demand rentals in any way, shape, or form that would be considered, resort style, let's say. So you're right. We are unique in ourselves. And that's one of the reasons why I say once the bylaws have been proposed, if at that time there's a staffing necessity, that's the time that it should be brought up. That's the only comment I wanted to make.
Thank you. I was just trying to be proactive, then reactive. Councillor Fisher and then Clerk Ainsworth.
Just along the same lines, I'd like to see it come forward. We adopt a bylaw, see that if a staffing component is needed, and then see it come forward during the budget. There may very well be, but I just think at this point, a lot of the subdivisions haven't been built yet. It might be a little bit premature to have somebody hired on. So I'd like to see where it goes once we do have the bylaw in place.
And before I do go to Clerk Ainsworth, under no circumstances was I suggesting that we put forward a motion to hire an additional person. I was just curious, in our neighboring municipalities, what type of additional resources did they need to hire to enforce these bylaws? Clerk Ainsworth.
Thank you. And through the mayor to council, one thing that will be relevant as well is the inspection piece to all of the applications. We are aware of 45 short-term rentals within the township that are just advertised on various websites. That would be 45 inspections just from the get-go that staff would have to conduct 45 applications that would have to be received. So that's where staff are going to try to give the best synopsis possible of what the resources for that kind of the not so much enforcing the bylaw, but on the front end of actually the application of the bylaw.
Thank you, Clerk Ainsworth, for that. So if council is amendable to Councillor Moores, if it's a friendly amendment, whether it's planning, whether it's bylaw, whether it's our building department, what type of staff investment are we making in enforcing and ensuring? And it's not saying that we don't want to, it's just what are we actually looking at here? Is there anything further? Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. That aspect, when we're not talking about enforcing, we're talking about the inspection piece. I'd be curious to know, in my mind, I would see the fire department and there should be a fee attached to that on a cost recovery basis. And we have volunteers that might want to take advantage of that. So that might be a way to kind of mitigate that particular piece.
I'm going to turn to you, and if this is out of order, volunteers, how? My apologies.
No, volunteers would likely be in a position to go and provide that inspection piece. And since they would be volunteering, they would be getting paid to go and do that. So what I'm saying is it would actually be an opportunity for our volunteer firefighters to engage in the community and be compensated for it, even if it might be at a minimal amount. So I'm just saying that's a way I think that we can kind of address the inspection piece in advance and not really have to worry about a staffing concern per se. So that's why I brought that up. Thanks.
And thank you. And it was not to my knowledge that our volunteers are composite firefighters. It was to my understanding that our fire prevention officers and our building officials were the ones who did the inspections. I didn't realize that our regular volunteers were the ones doing those inspections. And I don't believe we have anybody from fire, as we didn't have anything on the agenda this evening, but CO Schmidt, is it is it our fire prevention officers or who does attend? Because I didn't know that there was volunteers or our composite fire department that did attend to that.
Thank you, Mayor Coggan, through you to members of council. Maybe I'll respond by indicating that typically when staff are directed to bring back a policy under a bylaw, there's a financial implications section within the staff report, which we can provide for that type of information within the report, all subject to council's direction once they receive that. So as for the volunteer piece, my understanding it is actually would likely fall under our prevention officers' responsibilities. But again, that could be clarified within the staff report.
All right, thank you very much. So if that's going to fall into the financial component, there's no need for a friendly amendment to that. So as it's read, Clerk Ainsworth, if you could please repeat it.
That the motion now before council be amended as follows, that staff be directed to draft a short-term rental accommodation bylaw that requires longer-term stays of a minimum of 3 nights, inspection requirements, registration requirements, relevant application fees, and I will add relevant financial implications.
And Councillor Moore, are we satisfied with that?
Yes.
Thank you. And a seconder on that, I do believe I had Fisher. Thank you. Council, all those in favor? And that has carried. Moving on to our the main motion as amended. So back again to Councillor Moore, and our seconder was noted. All those in favor for the main motion as amended? And that has carried. Thank you. We're moving on to our temporary outdoor program, which was pulled by Councillor Garwood. So moved by Councillor Garwood, seconded by Deputy Cabral. And at this time, I will turn to Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Before we jump in, if I could just ask the clerk to pull up 4 photos that I have provided Clerk Ainsworth just to show council. The temporary outdoor patio program would be an added value for current and future businesses within our community. As the BIA council representative, and through many conversations, both the deputy mayor and I have had with business owners and BIA members, there is an existing buy-in and excitement for this initiative with businesses in the Elmville community. I was actually speaking with the BIA president today, and she has wholeheartedly endorsed this notion. So again, you'll just see a few photos up on the screen that the deputy mayor has kindly sourced and provided. And I would like to bring forth a amendment moving forward, if this is the appropriate time to do so.
We'll just scroll through your photos here first. That's 4. Councillor Garwood, with your indulgence, before we do move forward to an amendment, is there any members of council that would like to speak to the main item? And we do have Deputy Cabral.
Thank you. If you could bring the pictures back up on the screen, I think one of the important aspects of these particular pictures are that these are all pictures that are of outdoor patios, temporary in parking spaces adjacent to the businesses or in front of the businesses that they're located at. And they're at pavement level. They're not up on a raised platform. I would suggest that these are about as basic street patio as you can get. There's not a whole lot involved in doing it. When I read over the report, obviously we asked for a draft policy and a bylaw addressing a lot of key components. And I also understand that staff did a good job. They weren't able to provide everything, but they did provide something. I think that this just kind of illustrates, and I was actually going to ask you if you'd received an email. Someone did send me a text that they have an email. Did you receive an email from Mr. Horgan? Oh,
Thank you.
Would you be in a position at some point to read that, Clerk Ainsworth? Anyway, just when we're talking about some of the aspects of the report, one of them was whether or not folks wanted to do this. And As Councillor Garwood has already indicated, there are folks that have indicated a desire to take part in this. And for lack of better words, there is a financial impact. They're still coming out of the pandemic. And to be quite honest, it would bring some vibrancy to the downtown Elmvale. So I can't really speak to the amendment yet because it hasn't been put forward, but I certainly would like to see something like this still go forward.
Thank you, Deputy Cabral. And if Clerk Ainsworth, if I could ask you to circulate that to council after the meeting, or if you feel that it's significant at this point, we can have it verbally read, Deputy. Would you prefer it to be deputy? Like, do you want it read? Sure. Are we able to do that even though the individual didn't submit it as correspondence? At the will of the chair, if this is influential or we feel it's necessary. I mean, if all the hands are going to go up anyway, if we want to carry on. I mean, the first time this came forward, it was something we were all very supportive of. I think that the pictures that you've brought forward, I think we can all see how this is going to benefit Elmvale, the BIA, and Springwater as a whole. I know that you do have an amendment to go forward. If there are members of council that would like to hear this, there we are. All right, and we will ask if you can read that. Oh, sorry, Councillor Moore.
I would like to hear the email, first of all, and just to say, I love a great patio, so I will be there. And I hope that goes forward. I love it.
And not that I'm trying to shut down conversation. It's just not often all 7 of us are like, yes, let's do this. So I was just trying to get us to the next one. But if we could, Clerk Ainsworth, through you to read the email from the individual.
Thank you. This is from a business owner in Elmvale. And it read, just wanted to let you know that I'm aware that our patio is up for discussion at tomorrow's council meeting, and we're very excited about the prospect of having a patio in front of our establishment. This will add a lot to not only our business, but hopefully make the downtown more vibrant and welcoming. Other municipalities have been very successful with this type of project and have been able to make it economically feasible to build, use and maintain on a yearly basis. Unfortunately, I won't be able to attend the meeting in person Wednesday night. And looking forward to working with the township on this project this summer.
Thank you, Clerk Ainsworth. And before I go back to Councillor Fisher, just from my own understanding, correspondence received as such, in comparison to that of the EDHS agreement, this was just not requested to be formally part of the public record. Okay, thank you. I will go to Councillor Fisher and then back to Councillor Garwood for the amendment.
I just want to say, I think it's a great idea, particularly for a downtown location like Elmvale. I've seen other smaller towns adopt this. I think it's great economically, not only for the pubs and restaurants, but it brings people into the downtown core that spend money, right? So you'll find that they're going to go to other places and spend money, and I think it benefits the downtown as a whole. So I think it'd be a smart project to take on.
Councillor Garwood, it sounds like you have a lot of opposition to this, so don't all raise your hands at once for the seconder. So Councillor Garwood.
Thank you. And before I bring the amendment forward, I did want to thank the deputy clerk for drafting the report and the business owner for sending in that communication. Again, it's important that we have buy-in from the community. I know something that was talked a lot about as well. Sorry, my last comment before the amendment, but is the fact that this will also benefit future business, right? As the BIA consistently speaks about how to continue to grow business, enhance business, and again, provide more opportunity for our businesses and our residents to have access to business. This can be one more thing to say, come to Elmvale, open your shop here. So the amendment, it's a long one.
Oh, Garwood.
Whereas a temporary outdoor patio program would permit restaurants that do not have a permanent patio space on their property to extend to the edge of the road or on to the road and occupy a parking space to take advantage in the summer months and offer outdoor dining space to their customers. And whereas temporary outdoor patio programs are largely seen as an economic development initiative that attracts people to the downtown core, and the patio experience enhances their visit while in the community. And whereas the temporary outdoor patio program would also be an added value for future businesses within our community. Be it therefore resolved that staff be directed to report back to council at the July 5th, 2023 regular meeting with the draft basic temporary outdoor patio program specific to the utilization of on-street parking spaces for the Township of Springwater, with the goal to offer this program to existing businesses for the summer of 2023. And further, that staff continue to revise the temporary outdoor patio program to include an additional option for the 2024 summer season for the utilization of sidewalk space for temporary outdoor patios with the pedestrian walk / bypass via parking space, and that the revision be presented to council in early 2024 for consideration. I'm done.
Thank you. And I have that moved by Councillor Garwood and seconded by Deputy Cabral. The amendment, all those in favor? And that has carried. And Deputy Cabral,
Thank you.
before we move to the main motion.
Yeah, please. Thank you. I just wanted to make a comment with respect to Elmville itself. We had a business in Elmville last year located on Queen Street West. And they had a couple of tables outside with a couple of chairs. And when I would drive by, and if it was a nice day, there always seemed to be people sitting at those chairs. Unfortunately, bylaw dictated that they couldn't be there, and eventually they were removed. And the sad thing was that it was shortly thereafter that business shuttered. So, I can't help but wonder if that might have had something to do with it. So I just wanted to bring that up because I think this is an enhancement to the businesses that are already in Elmville and an opportunity for them to grow a little bit in the financial side. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. So we have the amendment and that was approved. And now we have back to the main motion as amended. So we are on 9.1.2, temporary outdoor patio program as amended. Council, all those in favor? And that has carried. We will now move on to the Elmville District High School Agreement update, which has also been pulled by Councillor Garwood, and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Fisher. Back to you, Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. In reviewing the joint use agreement for shared spaces at the Elmville District High School, and again, reviewing the amendments section within the document. Right now, I'm just asking for a slight adjustment to wording in one specific space, and then I have a follow-up question, but I will start with the specific amendment if permitted, or I can wait till other members of council have an opportunity to speak.
In light of efficiencies here, I think are there any other members of council that have any minor amendments or any concern with this, or if we can just focus on this first? I will. All right, so we're going to deal with them one at a time. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So my amendment of sorts would be.
Okay, we didn't make up the word. We didn't make up the word. That word
It's a
is
friendly amendment. I guess that's where I'm going here. All right, that's where I'm going. There's a specific line in the agreement that is talking about access to the facility. So in conversation with Councillor Alexander and the Deputy Mayor, I am presenting that staff be directed to include the following provision in the agreement regarding negotiations in the future. That the township should have a consistent set block of time per week to have exclusive access to the facility to offer programming or drop-in style open gymnasium time to residents of the township, and that staff place priority on finalizing this agreement over the summer months. And further, that the Elmville District High School joint use agreement be added as a standing verbal update item to the regular meeting agenda.
and we have a seconder for that. Counselor, I think I actually, no, we'll go to Counselor Erickson. You seconded the main motion, you're seconding the amendment. Is there any comment from staff, CEO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I will maybe defer to Manager Dean if she has any comments.
Manager Dean?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through to yourself and the rest of council. No major comments on that. So in terms of the township having first right of refusal, kind of as we mentioned in the report, that would be one of the plans of staff to program that space for a set amount of days or a set amount of times throughout the week, where we could have recreational registered programs offered as well as drop-in programs offered. And those times would be required to be staffed by township personnel.
Thank you, Manager Dean. And to Clerk Ainsworth, before we move to the update, as this is not changing the direction, this is simply, in my opinion, enhancing what's already there. There's no change of direction. Can this be a friendly amendment? No? Are you sure? All right, so I will move to Clerk Ainsworth to look to where we're going to place this. Thank you, Clerk Ainsworth.
Thank you. The main motion would be to receive the report, and then Councillor Garwood's amendment would be as he stated. So just a vote on the amendment and then a vote on the main motion as amended.
All right. Councillor Alexander.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and thank you, Councillor Garwood, for bringing forward the motion and doing a lot of the research behind all the wording of what came back to us from the staff report. If you're amenable, I would like to add a friendly amendment to your amendment, because I'm certainly open to improving the agreement for the township through the continued negotiations with the school board. What I'm struggling with right now is why the original agreement has not returned post-COVID. Our community halls and many programs that were closed during COVID have been up and running for quite some time. So the friendly amendment that I would like to propose is to add that EDHS is open back up to the public as per the original agreement as of July 4th, while the township continues to negotiate a new agreement and will continue status quo until council approves the new agreement.
Thank you for that, Councillor Alexander. And before I do grab a seconder, actually, before I grab a seconder, if I can, and I'll go to CEO Schmidt. Oh, and a seconder, you're correct. Actually, you're correct. Deputy Cabral is seconding. Thank you for that. To my understanding, there was no approved agreement. So not moving back to an agreement, there was an agreement that didn't allow us access. And I will defer to CEO Schmidt for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Coggan, through you to Councillor Alexander and members of council. My understanding, and then again, I may have to lean on Manager Dean here. My understanding, there is a current agreement in place, and the current agreement essentially allows for the township to have access to the facility whenever the school is essentially not using the facility, if you will. Why it has not moved forward, again, that would be something I would need to ask Manager Dean to maybe comment on. As for the friendly amendment to move forward with the current agreement, the hope is to be back in front of council as soon as possible to hopefully have this proposed agreement or amendments to the agreement in front of council as quickly as we can. My understanding is that the school board is meeting sometime this month, and hopefully they will be in agreement with what we're proposing, and hence we will be in a position, I'm hoping, by the July meeting, subject to further discussion with the board, to be on the July 5th agenda with the proposed amendment, and hopefully council can adopt at that date. That is subject to discussion at the school board. I'm optimistic maybe that they'll be in agreement with this. But hopefully, if that's the case, we could be back in front of council as quickly as July 5th, I think.
Thank you. And before I go back to Councillor, I'm going to go to Manager Dean. So from what I'm hearing today, counter to what I've been hearing for quite some time, the agreement that's in place today, the school board has final say essentially, and whether or not we can get in there or not get in there, and that there were no provisions on the township's side. So this is very important to me. I want to make sure that through CEO Schmidt, Manager Dean, and council this evening, that I'm able to deliver a clear message to our residents after this evening. And if we have to sit here, and I apologize for your indulgence, because I'm hearing many different things at many different times, and it's been different managers, different CAOs. There's been a lot of turning wheels in this, but there really should only be one message to the community. And I do apologize to council and to Councillor Alexander. I have a different understanding of the agreement that was in place. To my understanding, there was supposed to be a outbuilding that was supposed to be funded. There was a partnership, and this is hearsay. This is not, and again, I do apologize to council and I apologize to the public for putting my understanding. This is not anybody else's record. I have heard that there was a partnership with Lions whereby they were putting in $40,000 for equipment, and they were going to have an outdoor gym where the community could come in and use it. And we were excited about that. And then the community went out and fundraised hundreds of thousands of dollars to make this facility available. And the then CAO told me that there was negotiations between the school board that wasn't pulling through, and the school board said, well, there's, we have janitors and we have unions and we have all these different loops that we need to come through. And to me, at the end of the day, there's a lot of people that are emotionally and financially invested into this facility. And I just would like a very clear message this evening, and whether it's through Councillor Alexander saying the existing, the non-existing, whatever it is, I would just like tonight to be able to go home and say to the residents, nope, this is what have had been, and that was all coffee shop hearsay, whichever it is. What does it look like moving forward? And I think the most important thing is residents, I think, just want to know, when they hear that there's volleyball or pickleball or a cooking class, they can just show up and they don't have to log on, and they don't have that they can, whatever it is, just be part of the community and allow that to be the hub for them. So if I can get clarification on that long diatribe, my apologies. I will go to Manager Dean, back to Alexander, and then Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coghlan, for yourself and to the rest of the council. I will try and hit most of the points that were just said there. So there is currently an agreement in place, and there was at one time in that agreement an annex as it used to be referred to, that was going to be an outbuilding that was going to be a fitness center. I don't know when, because unfortunately I wasn't involved with it or the township at that time, but that did not get billed as part of the skill project, and the fitness rooms moved inside the school. So there was an annex, but the fitness rooms got moved inside the school, which were originally, I believe, slated to be grade 7 and 8 classrooms, and they were swapped over to fitness classrooms. So the expansion of the school happened, the gymnasium was built, and I think, give or take, again, not knowing the full history, the rest of the project continued outside of the annex building, and the community fundraised for dollars, which originally they did. Some of those were set aside for the annex building that didn't continue, but the fundraising dollars are slated to be put into equipment for the school. So not capital costs that the school board spent for building the expansion to it, but they will be spent on equipment put into the school. So at this point, there has been some equipment purchased for the fitness room, and there is still a substantial amount of those fundraising dollars to be utilized in the future for equipment to program different spaces or utilizations within that facility. In terms of the access to the school, so the school in the original agreement, essentially any kind of non-school hours would be basically hours that the school, that the township could program and rent the space out, or program it out for recreational or active programs. It would still require, so the school board would have a custodian there. It would still require a township staff within the current agreement to be on site at all times, whether it be a drop-in program, whether it be a third-party group like the Barrie Royals, or say minor hockey, using it for basketball or some kind of training in the school. It would also require a township personnel on site there. I think that kind of touched on most points. I don't know if that clearly, if I didn't clearly answer a part of the question, just please kind of remind me or ask again, and I will provide that further detail.
Thank you. I'm going to go back to Councillor Alexander.
Thank you. So I'm almost, and I'm not sure if Manager Dean answered that. I think she did, but I'm almost 100% certain that there is a signed agreement in place. I just pulled back my original motion, which did state that on August 7th, 2019, council authorized the execution of the agreement. I think I'm almost positive I looked over and read it. I can't find it now. It took me forever to find it in the first place. So that would definitely take a while, but I do believe there is a signed agreement in place. I know it was open and in use. There were people playing pickleball. It had just started, but it was open, it was in use, and then COVID hit. So I don't understand why we didn't reopen it like we did with everything else after COVID stopped. And again, if we want to improve the contract and negotiations, that's better for all residents. I'm all over that. I just would like to see it. And I'm very hopeful that you come back on July 5th. I don't know how optimistic I am in that it is a school board and I could see it going back and forth. We're getting into summer vacations. I don't want this to remain closed where residents can't use it. We heard on Monday from a group of people that I sat with that they were very annoyed that they'd fundraised, that this was up and they could no longer use it. So I would just like to get it up and running, kind of status quo, and then continue. Absolutely. If we can improve the agreement, that's great. But I would like to see it up and running as soon as possible, which would be the beginning of July. I'd be more than willing to change the date to like the end of that first week. So if, we are lucky enough that we come back and you have an agreement and we're in a, it passes through council, then we can go that route. But I don't want to have it wait till the end of the summer.
Thank you. And before I turn to Manager Dean, I see CM Schmidt, and then I did say Cabral and then Fisher.
Thank you, Mayor Colgan, and through you to Council Alexander. So I can confirm, Council Alexander, you are correct. The agreement was in around August of 2019. So there is definitely a current agreement in place. What I think the council needs to maybe understand is that current agreement requires the township to cost share for all of the hours in which the school is not utilizing the space. The township is essentially going to have to pay that amount of money, whatever that amount of money is. So what the township is trying to do through this proposed agreement is essentially not have to pay the cost share and just pay for the times that we are asking to rent the facility, if you will. And also, as Manager Dean mentioned, during those times under the current agreement, we are going to have a staff member and I believe a custodian there, which is going to be a challenge because we have limited custodians. So that is part of the challenge of trying to implement the current agreement, if you will. Happy to, again, try to go back to the school board and try to get this up and running as quickly as possible. Again, that was the intent of us meeting with the school board recently and them now those representatives now going to their board to seek this amendment. There was no pushback on the cost sharing piece. And we're hoping that that will continue. The ultimate goal is to get this open to the community. Absolutely. And obviously first priority will be the school. Second priority will be the township. We will, as Manager Dean mentioned, allocate time for scheduled programming where people can sign up and there will likely be a fee for that. There will also be drop-in times, which I think the community is thinking that those drop-in times, there will be no fee. That's subject to council's direction, but as we have other facilities where drop-ins happen, there is a fee for those individuals to come. So again, I'm just trying to provide as much detail as I can here to members of council. And maybe I'll pause there.
Thank you. And I will go to Manager Dean for anything substantive. Manager Dean?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. CAO Schmidt just confirmed that yes, the agreement, there is currently a signed agreement in place.
Thank you. And I think when I'm using the term drop in, whether there's a nominal fee or not, I picture it much like our public skating. We as a municipality block the time. no formal user group can have that time. It's open to the public, whether people choose to come or not. That's, we don't, there's no pre-registration, anything involved. It's just come skate. So Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I'm a bit of a loss, and I'll tell you why. There has to be an agreement in place. That's obvious. We were in the school. So the Simcoe County District School Board certainly want to let us utilize the school. As far as having staff on hand, it doesn't really matter if we're the ones who are utilizing the current agreement, because there was staff on hand the day that I went and toured it. There was pickleball going on. I went with Councillor Perry Ritchie at the time. The weight room was open. There was a staff member on site. This is prior to COVID happening. I remember going to the opening, when they first started letting people inside. And we had the agreement in place, and obviously council of the day said, this is the agreement that we're going to abide by. Simply giving it back over to the school board, I'm not really certain, to be honest with you, CAO Schmidt, that I think that's beneficial, because we don't know what the costs are for the cost sharing. Yet we would be paying for utilizing the facility just in a different way. I'd also suggest that we would still be on the hook for the custodial staff costs, and we would certainly at some point in time be required, I think right from the get-go, to have a staff member on site. So I kind of struggle with it, because I really think that we have an obligation. Folks were calling me up in February when the schools started opening up their own facilities, saying that they were really ticked off that they had to go to one of the local elementary schools and play pickleball. And they couldn't understand why they could get into the elementary school and play pickleball when they had fundraised and had an agreement, and they had this in place over at EDHS to utilize the double gym as they had in the past. Even if that's the only thing that happened, we could probably fill it up every night with pickleball. All of a sudden they weren't able to, and it's kind of like we were being held back for some reason, and I don't know what the reason really is. I don't see why we can't put a handful of programs back in there and start to utilize that space, because at the very beginning, when we signed this agreement and we opened up that facility, we had certain things, and it took a little while to get them going, and then they were going. So we're going to experience that again. Then we should actually get in there and start doing it. And I'm actually sitting here thinking to myself, maybe what we should get is a legal opinion on what our rights are to that facility. And I'm looking at CAO Schmidt. I know it's not something that CAO Schmidt can necessarily do on his own, but I struggle with turning it back over to the Simcoe County District School Board when we were already promised certain blocks of time to be able to utilize the facility, put in our recreational programs, make it available to our residents. And now what it seems like this is doing is we're heading down a path where we're going to basically abdicate that and put it back into the Simcoe County District School Board's hands. And we're going to be booking time through them. So I really think maybe we should get a legal opinion on where we stand on whether we have right of access to the school or not, because if we do, I'd like to see us get back in there and have our residents utilize a facility that they paid for and township is still paying for, and we're not getting to use. That's my comment. I don't understand why we're not in there.
Theo Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through you to Deputy Mayor Cabral. Very valid points, Deputy Mayor Cabral. And all that I would say is that it's my understanding that the township has not had to pay any cost sharing amounts to date. And what I mean by that is, just to be very clear, it's the operating costs of the facility. So your utilities, your hydro, your air conditioning. So for all of the time that the actual school is not using it, the township is going to have to pay those costs, whether we book it or not. So it's a cost to the township, whereas this route that we're going, we're subject to whatever their fee is for an hour. And I believe, Manager Jean, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it's around $30 an hour to book it. And that would be the fee that the township would pay. Whereas if we take it on, we don't book it, we're paying for those costs of those utilities regardless, if we can rent it or not. So we're trying to look at it from that perspective in that, again, the intent is to get the community back in the facility. The school will always have first right or first priority, even under the current agreement. We have second priority, and the intent is for us to book and schedule according to what we feel our needs are. And we can adjust that with the school. Any other times in which we don't book it and or the school doesn't book it, it's open to anybody to book. And the school board will manage that booking. And will, if they don't have people booked, they'll obviously have to eat the costs for the utilities, if you will. So I just want to be clear, and hopefully I'm clear on what I'm trying to say there. We think, and again, subject to a full-blown cost analysis, we think that is more advantageous to the township to walk this path as opposed to being stuck with some cost sharing that we don't know what those costs could add up to. I think they will be much more than it would be if we just book time and pay, which some of those revenues will come in for registered programs to help offset our expenses. The drop-ins, again, they'll be subsidized to the extent that people come in. Great, it'll have some revenue. To the extent that people don't drop in, that's just the nature of the business that the municipality provides.
Before I do go back, and I do apologize, Deputy Corral, that would be the third time I told Councillor Fisher and Councillor Garwood. So if this is immediate and imminent.
I guess my point I want to make is with respect to allowing the school board to book and not having those blocks of times exclusively available to the township as per the original agreement, which obviously council thought it was a good idea at the time, and there may be a cost to it, there may not be, we don't know. But what it does put us in a position of is that when we start to look at putting programs in that we haven't booked, the school board has the opportunity to book those facilities to whoever they want, which then will negate our ability to put the programs in place too. So that's my final comment with respect to that.
Councillor Fisher.
Actually, it's largely already been said, but I think we have an obligation to the residents who raise that money. And so it sets a very bad precedent if we allow people in our communities to raise money and then they don't get what they raised the money for. So I think a speedy resolution to this sounds like it is something that we need. As for the cost sharing, giving it back to the school board, the costs, as you've outlined, Mr. Schmidt, are they're a little bit ambiguous, right? So I would worry about handing it back to them and having to pay for the costs of running that facility, even when we're not using it.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So, and I know CEO Schmidt had noted there's not a current cost associated. I believe that's what you mentioned, but it does state in the report that the township would continue with the annual contribution of $50,000 a year for 10 years to be funded by development charges. So are we currently paying that now, or that would start once the new agreement? Thank you. You're shaking your head. That answers my first question. My second question, which Manager Dean partially alluded to it earlier on, so maybe through the mayor, I'll direct this to Manager Dean. Also in the report, it does state that the community fundraising funds will remain directed towards capital costs to construct and equip the community use spaces of the renovated facility. So I see capital costs in there. So I know you had noted earlier on that the funds will be utilized towards equipping the space itself. But again, I have residents asking me, which I don't blame them, absolutely, saying the Elmville District Lions Club donated $45,000 initially, 38,000 or so was utilized to purchase equipment already. So there's around $7,000 left in that account. But there's 235,000 and change sitting in another fundraising effort account with a total balance of $242,000 currently today. So those funds are sitting there. So again, the questions that I've been receiving from residents are saying, where are these funds and are they being utilized specifically for this agreement? Are they going to remain in Elmvale? Are they being turned over to the school board? And again, they're expecting an answer and we need to give them one.
CEO Schmidt. Oh, Manager Dean.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through yourself to Councillor Garwood. So we did confirm, because of the wording in the original agreement where it says capital costs. So I'm just pulling the exact wording, capital costs and equipping the facility. And again, as I mentioned earlier, the capital cost at the time when the agreement was originally looked at was when the annex for the fitness room was going to be put on site. So that those dollars would have been specifically for that outbuilding. The outbuilding never was constructed due to tell you the truth, I don't know the whole history, so I'm not going to speculate on why it wasn't, but due to changes in the facility design, and then the fitness room was brought inside the school. So those dollars were never requested from the school board to the township to be used for those capital costs because the building wasn't built. So the dollars that have been requested to at this point, which you just mentioned, are in the right about $38,000, were for equipment purchased for the fitness room that is currently located inside of the school building. The other dollars are still sitting in the Elmville District High School fundraising account. And at this point, as they were fundraised for that project, they would be directed to future requests. So the school itself has brought forward requests to the township and to the school board for equipment they would like to see in the facility to help run their programming. And then again, as the township starts to run programming, there will likely be some equipment requests that we want to see in that school to say run some younger programming for younger children that might not be typically in the school.
Before I just carry on, Manager Dean, the money that is sitting there, you said people could request to the school board. Who has authority over the funds that were raised?
Sorry, Mayor Colgan, through yourself to the rest of the council. It would be through the school board and through the township. So the CAO and the director of finance and the school board controller and the principal of the school. So it would be specifically related to either school programming, or township programming that those equipment were requested for. So similar to what they would have been fundraised to equip the school for the uses of that new expanded area. So not, for example, textbooks per se, or something outside of the community use spaces of that school.
Thank you. Council, are there any additional comments? Councilor Alexander and then Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And I appreciate all the discussion that's going on here. I think it's important. But this is my worry on how this is not going to be resolved by July 5th. Even if we have a proposed agreement that comes back, we may not agree on it. And then we're still in the same position where we're not moving forward. A previous council did approve this. I feel we have an obligation to honor their approval until we decide that we are going to change the agreement. So I would like to see, and again, as I said, I'm willing to move it back to like the end of the week. If we come back to that July 5th meeting and it's a great option and everybody's let's go, then that's great. But if we're going to be going back and forth and still having discussions, which are important, I don't want people to feel rushed to make decisions. I feel it's important to have the facility open as per the agreement that has already been voted on by a previous council, and I don't understand why it's not continuing as is. I think that's irresponsible of us to not continue with it.
Okay, I'm going to turn to CEO Schmidt. So question, if council was to provide direction to Manager Dean today that says we want a 4-hour block on Tuesday nights at EDHS tomorrow, this is now a priority for a recreation department, we want to see that happen. The agreement that's in place today, can that happen?
Through you, Mayor Coughlin, to members of council, my understanding is yes. What I'm actually unclear about, to be quite honest with you, and I think members of council have asked this multiple ways, is why we're not back in the EDHS facility. And I don't have that answer, to be quite honest with you. And I'm not sure if Manager Dean, you have that answer. I know obviously COVID put a pause on things and the school board essentially put a pause on rentals for quite some time. But I can't answer that question, to be quite honest with you, as to why we're not back in the facility, to be quite honest with you.
I'm going to defer to Manager Dean, and I get that our municipality doesn't offer programming anywhere. We don't, everything that's offered in our small halls or in our community halls or anywhere is offered by a third party. So I understand that, but I too am very curious. I've been told numerous things. It was janitors, we didn't have the staffing for it. It was that the school board permitted us access. So I would like to know with this agreement that's in front of us, not the one that's in front of us tonight, the one that's already in place. I was made aware in our last term that the reason we didn't go back in is because we couldn't, not because we chose not to. So I would really like clarification on that, please.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through yourself and to the rest of the council. So it's a combination of different things. So we have been working with the school board and going back and forth with them with the logistics of this agreement. They don't have an agreement like this in place at any other school, where the school has truly fully been turned over to the township at all times. So there's access, there's training between the different personnel, whether it be their personnel's ours, the custodial requirements. In some of the spaces, it's the usage and SOPs in terms of the fitness room and what the school, would like to see it utilized for, and the monitoring and how the township would kind of monitor and do that. So it's multiple different aspects of the logistics of the agreement and finalizing and securing them. And then on the note of having the school available if we existed, having the school programmed if we kept the current agreement in place. The steps that would have to be taken for that would be to put recruitment notices out to recruit staff for the programming and the custodial duties for the space to program it for those times.
I'm just going to provide myself with the follow on here. So pre-COVID, were there municipal or township run programs or drop-in at EDHS?
Thank you, Mayor Collin, through yourself to the rest of council. So there was one trial night of pickleball. So it was being used as a trial with the school board. I believe it ran, I'm probably going to get this number wrong, but I believe it ran about 3 to 4 weeks before COVID hit. And then the plan was that the township and the school board working together to introduce full programming. And we were just going through all those models and going to be going through the logistics of training and the further requirements. And then essentially March 13th hit. And then we kind of know how the next 3 years happened from then. So in terms of other schools being open for access for groups starting, I can't remember exactly when the school started opening, but say sometime this winter, it was for uses that would kind of be through their normal protocols and their normal programs, not per se the joint or shared use program that would be going into place with the current agreement at EDHS.
Okay, so thank you. So that helps clarify some things, because what I'm hearing in the community is that there was programming pre-COVID and now there's not program. So what I'm hearing was there was 4 trial evenings that were provided by the township, and then COVID hit and we're essentially back to square one. We're where we were from where those trial nights were. Manager Dean.
Yep, thank you, Mayor Colvin. So it was pickleball nights, and it was a pickleball or pickle pass, I think is what it was called. And so people could purchase, I believe it had 5 uses on it, and it was essentially a drop-in pass, so that money didn't have to be taken per se at the door. It was a drop-in pass, and it ran for, as I say, I probably likely have the dates wrong. I could look it up, but say 4 or so weeks leading up to COVID, and it was a drop-in style program. So the gym was open and available to those that would like to play pickleball, and I believe it was set up with 4 to 6 courts.
And understanding we have done that trial and we now know how that works, and I'm assuming we don't have any less staff than we did then. Is there any reason between now, today, and when this agreement or whichever agreement this council chooses to move forward with, is there any reason why we can't be offering that to residents today? With the agreement that's in place, understand that we are moving to this agreement. I understand the high school knows that, but the gym's empty. So we've done this before. We used a pass. Is there not a reason we can't use that template? And in the interim, understanding that while we're fingers crossed, we're going to have a July 5th date. Maybe that's going to happen. Maybe it's not. Can we can we offer some programming in the gym between now and when this is finalized?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through yourself to the rest of council again. We do not currently have those employees in place. The employees at the time were temporary employees. They actually do still exist in the township, but they have taken on roles of employees that have retired or since left the township. So they are in the township now in a different fashion. So we don't have per se recreation programmers or additional custodians on staff. But yes, could we run a drop-in program at EDHS? We could. Some of the more detailed programs, so for say example, something in some of say the cafeteria, not the cafeteria, I'm sorry, the commercial kitchen or the fitness room, those would take a few more just logistics work through with the schools in terms of SOPs and training or what they would require for the commercial kitchen. But in terms of the gymnasium drop-in, it would be in the situation of recruiting staff to oversee those evenings evenings.
Thank you for that. Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I would suggest that we actually do that, not talk about it. I think we can open up the gym just to pickleball, volleyball, floor hockey, whatever we like, and let the residents know that it's available. That's how we're going to get people to know that A, it's available, and B, that they can utilize it. I also just wanted to know, we're talking here about this proposed new agreement. I just want to make it clear. I'm not saying that I support the new agreement or the proposal to turn it back over to the school board. So I think it's a bit folly for us to move forward with the assumption that there's going to be a new agreement. We have a current agreement in place. I think we should be in the school doing what that current agreement permits us to do. And if it means just starting off with the gymnasium, then so be it. And let's work forward the way we were working forward before the pandemic hit. I would also like to know if the agreement that is attached to this report is the operational agreement for the utilization of the school space, or is this the agreement on the cost sharing initiative when they put the building in place? Maybe CEO Schmidt, you can let me know if the agreement that's attached to the report is the operational one that gives us access to the school, or is there another agreement that actually provides that? Thank you.
CEO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mayor Coggins. Through you to Deputy Mayor. It's my understanding, Deputy Mayor, that what you see attached is the one agreement that the township has, that is inclusive of both aspects, if you will.
Thank you for that clarification. All right, I'm going to go to Clerk Ainsworth because she has her hand up, and then we'll figure out where we're at right now.
Thank you. And that's what I wanted to advise where council is at right now. The main motion has been tabled. An amendment has been tabled and moved and seconded as per Councillor Garwood's reading of it at the beginning. So I will read that again to remind council. That staff be directed to include the following provisions in the agreement negotiations. The township to have a consistent set block of times per week to have exclusive access to the facility, to offer programming and drop-in gymnasium time to residents of the township. And that staff place priority on finalizing this agreement over the summer months. And further, that EDHS joint use agreement be added as a standing verbal update item to the regular meeting agenda. So that is what is on the table currently. Councillor Garwood, if you would like to change that to include the information that Councillor Alexander has requested, you may do so. If not, council can vote on this, and then Councillor Alexander, you may table a subsequent amendment if you wish.
Sorry, Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I'm fine to permit what Councillor Alexander has mentioned into the motion for the proposed amendment to the agreement.
Back to Clerk Ainsworth, please.
Thank you. And just to clarify that piece, I have, and further, that EDHS is opened back up to the public as per the original agreement effective. And I've put July 11th, as you stated at the end of that week. Is there anything else to be added to that sentence?
Just your microphone, sorry.
Sorry, long night. The other part of it, 1 second, sorry. Again, I'm up to your discretion if we need to include that the township continues. EDHS is open back up to the public as per the original agreement as of July 11th, while the township continues to negotiate a new agreement and will continue status quo until council approves a new agreement.
And if I can, and with the discretion of council, status quo does not involve resources to provide programming to our, so I don't know how we put in there that this is a priority to us, and I don't know, I don't want to direct any hiring or any realignments of any departments, but I don't know how to make this possible without like a janitor and a person on staff. So I'll go to Councillor Alexander and then back to CEO Schmidt.
So operationally, I would put that back to the township because I feel like that's kind of their wheelhouse, not mine. I'm just trying to move forward with the original agreement as it was, which would be essentially where we were in 2020 before COVID hit. And then they can come back to us on, you know, after we do this trial run, pick up on a pilot project where we were at, and then figure out how we're going to move forward. But there is an agreement in place, so we should be able to move from that agreement and move forward.
Thank you, CEO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and through you to Councillor Alexander. The operational piece, yes, I would ask that you leave that with the township staff to try to sort through. Again, I'm not privy to the schedule that the school has right now for the month of June, understanding graduation and so on and so forth. So definitely as of tomorrow morning, we'll reach out to the school to see what availability the school has for the month of June and for the course of the summer. And we can see what we can manage to try to ensure that the direction you're providing, we can actually fulfill.
Thank you, Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I would actually like to propose maybe a change to that amendment. I would just like to suggest that part of it include the wording that staff be directed to engage in opening up EDHS shared facilities to programming. Oh, sorry. I couldn't read, you couldn't read anything. Open up EDH shared facilities to residents through programming as soon as possible.
And I'm fully supportive of everything that you're saying, and I get that, but again, it's how are we within the corporation going to provide that, because it doesn't just happen. It's people that make it happen. So if we're willing to say that we're willing to bring on another staff member or to realign duties, because I know without identifying individuals, the people that were brought on to manage that have moved on to other positions within the corporation. Those positions don't exist anymore. So while I would love to turn a key and make that programming happen, it takes manpower, it takes hours to make it happen. So if it's a priority to us, I don't know if there's resources or if you report back. I don't want it to appear that this council is saying, do it, make it happen, and we don't care how it happens. And I'm not trying to put this on Manager Dean or any of her staff that are hired for other reasons. I think that this is a priority to the community. If that means hiring the people to put in place to make it happen, make it happen. Clerk Ainsworth. Oh, sorry, CEO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Just to clarify, I believe the positions exist. The individuals that were in the position have been moved on, if you will, to other positions with the municipality. So my understanding is the positions exist. We would require to go out and hire for those positions. So that will take some time to hire those positions. And again, that's something that in the interim, is there a way to get us there? That's something I need to have a further discussion with staff to see what we can do operationally in the interim until we are able to bring on those resources.
And thank you, NCO Schmidt. So as you've heard, the direction that's provided through this amendment, there's no further direction from council. The positions are there. They just need to be filled. You're good to go. We're great. All right. Here and we're good, guys. Is your hand up again? Put it down. All right, so we do have, okay, clarification here.
Clarification is the word engage does not mean to complete. It means to engage and work towards. Here. So it's not to get it done right today, but get started on it right away to open it up.
Thank you for the clarification. Not. So we do have a amendment to the motion before us, and I'm gonna ask Clerk Ainsworth just one more time. Just one more time so that we know what we're voting on here, please.
Thank you. And I will require some clarification, if Councillor Garwood is, looking to add Deputy Mayor Cabral's wording into the motion. We do have two paragraphs that would, say slightly the same thing. So if it's okay, I can add Deputy Mayor Cabral's comments into the last paragraph. Is that okay?
If you could just read what you have, and if we get three heads nodding on this side of the table, then we'll continue on in that direction.
Okay. That staff be directed to include the following provisions in the agreement negotiations. The township to have a consistent set block of times per week to have exclusive access to the facility to offer programming and drop-in open gymnasium time to residents of the township. And that staff place priority on finalizing this agreement over the summer months. And further, that Elmvale District High School Joint Use Agreement be added as a standing verbal update item to the regular meeting agenda. And further, that EDHS is opened back up to the public as per the original agreement, either as soon as possible or July 11th, while the township continues to negotiate the new agreement with the township, remaining status quo until a new agreement is approved. And that staff be directed to engage in opening the EDHS shared facilities to residents through programming as soon as possible. So it's the last two paragraphs that if council would like to keep it in, that
I'm fine with saying it twice. It's important. Anything further? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment? That has carried. And we will now go back to the main motion as amended. So voting on the main motion as amended. Council, all those, I don't remember who my mover and seconder was. I had Garwood and Fisher moving as amended. Council, all those in favor? And that has carried. Thank you. I will now move on to verbal reports. And at this time, I will move to, there are no development updates or county updates, so we are looking for municipal updates. And I'll go to Councillors Alexander and Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I have a couple, so bear with me. So first of all, Manager Dean and I had the opportunity to be a part of the SSEA Municipal Climate Leadership Committee meeting this morning. One of the takeaways from this committee will be Springwater developing a climate plan. There's some great opportunities to collaborate with our neighboring municipalities in the SSEA and specifically working with Oro-Medonte as they are kind of in the same position with us with respect to their climate plan. So stay tuned. It's some really interesting stuff going on there. So I'm excited to be a part of that. Second of all, the Hillsdale CRA will be hosting their vendor market on Saturday, June 10th from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. And the market is at the Hillsdale Community Park. There are over 40 vendors and lots of fun activities for the kids. If you're around on Saturday, I encourage you to drop by and attend. And third, this one's out a bit, but so I'm going to do it this meeting and then I'm going to do it again their next meeting. But the Phelpston CRA will be hosting their Canada Day fireworks on Saturday, July 1st at dusk. I believe these are the only official Canada Day fireworks in the township. So we'd love all to come out. There is no fee to attend the event. However, we ask everyone either brings a firework or does a cash donation, as all of the fireworks are community donated. And we hope to see residents from right across the township.
Okay, I have Councillor Garwood and then Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I have a few items. The first one I wanted to mention was the Elmvale Relay for Life, which was held on May the 26th. I want to congratulate the Elmvale Relay for Life team for fundraising more than $25,000, almost $30,000, which is absolutely incredible. It takes determination, perseverance, and most of all, a desire to make a change in our world to help people who are living with cancer. So I wanted to congratulate the Elmville District High School students and staff and community members who participated. The family and I were out and we had a lovely time. The other item I wanted to mention is that the splash pad is going to be opening up in mid-June. There's no specific date yet identified. Currently, there are a few Homer Barrett Park improvements happening right now too that I wanted to let community members know about. So the township is undertaking two projects at Homer Barrett Park. One, splash pad improvements, and two, playground replacement and play area upgrades. So those will be done within the coming weeks, which is exciting. I wanted to mention on June the 2nd, the Springwater Public Library hosted the Drag Storytime event. Again, I attended with my family, and I wanted to just say congratulations to Springwater Public Library. It was wonderful to see the 90 or so residents attend and fill the room with lots of happiness. Also, I wanted to mention the Springwater Farmers Market Elmville opens June the 16th at 9 a.m. and there is a call out for vendors right now. So for anyone that would like to participate in that, please do. And my last thing is on Monday, July the 3rd, the Elmville CRA will be hosting its very first event. It is going to be a fundraising event, and it will be a scavenger hunt throughout the community of Elmville. We're working with local businesses right now, and we're literally just getting things going. So nothing's been sent out or announced yet, but July the 3rd. So that's the Monday. And it'll be from 11 a.m. to 3 or 4 in the afternoon. You'll start on the Floss Ag Society grounds, the fairgrounds there. And there'll be an interactive family activity throughout the community where residents can participate. So anyway, we're excited about that very first event for the Elmville CRA, which will be taking place in a few weeks. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Garwood. Councillor Thompson.
Just want to add to Councillor Garwood. I also attended the library event, and fresh off their National Youth and Children's Literacy Award, I attended story time with Faye and Fluffy. We had over 90 attendees. It was a great event. It focused on kindness, literacy, and learning. And I just want to thank CEO Delgado, her staff for an amazing event, and also want to thank the students from EDHS that came and volunteered. Great job. Thank you.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you. I wanted to have the opportunity to formally recognize Diane Ferrier, who celebrated on Sunday 50 years as the choir director and organist at the Grenfell United Church. That's an amazing feat. And she's just been there for, like I say, all the good times and the bad times. And we had about 120 people show. We had folks from Wasaga Beach came to play music. We had Angus folk from the United Church there, and it was just a wonderful service and a wonderful show of community support for her. So congratulations.
Thank you for that. Council, are there any other community updates? Deputy Cabral?
It's not a community update. We're done. I actually would like to propose a reconsideration.
Through you to Clerk Ainsworth.
Yes, through you to Clerk Ainsworth.
Whoever.
Thank you. The motion being requested for reconsideration is motion C280C 2023, passed on May 10th regarding the Community Hub Master Plan. Once the reconsideration, now that it's on the floor, there is no debate or comment. Mayor Coughlin, I would request a mover and seconder, and then immediately to a vote, please.
I have Deputy Cabral moving and Councillor Fisher seconding. Oh, and all those in favor? And that has carried. And back to Clerk Ainsworth.
Thank you. The motion now that is before council reads that the presentation regarding the Community Hub Master Plan from Vivian Gomez, project lead, be received, and that staff be directed to bring forward an alternate, simplified, and purpose-built design, which includes 2 ice pads in phase one and an aquatic center as a possible phase two. And further, that staff and the consultant review lower cost possibilities of including other listed features within the facility, including a gymnasium component. Now at this time, council can fully debate, amend the motion before council.
And I will move to, I have the mover and seconder. It was Cabral and Fisher. And I will move to Deputy Mayor Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I just want to reframe that. That is the original motion because the subsequent reconsideration motion has not been read yet. I want to take a step back to that particular date. I was attending remotely, and there was a member of council that was not present at that time, Councillor Alexander. And I'll be honest in that reading over the agenda that day, it said we were going to be receiving the report. So I will admit that I was taken aback a bit, where all of a sudden we were providing direction on the facilities that council would like to see coming forward at that location. And what I'd like to do is share my screen if at all possible. Apparently there's going to be something pop up here in a second.
Okay, so do you have a draft copy?
Yes.
Okay. Or you could just email the draft copy.
No, if I'm able to share it, then I just click on this then, correct? There we go. Thank you. I think what ended up happening is I reflected on this quite substantially because there was some comments made with respect to certain amenities. And when I looked at this and I looked at these particular numbers, these are from the residents of Springwater Township. It struck me that down in Midhurst area was 42%. So the largest percentage are in the south end where the community hub will be located. So I thought that was relatively important given the scope of the hub, and also the fact that this percentage would probably also kind of tend to reflect what the percentage might be going forward as more and more residents move into the area. The other thing that struck me with respect to this particular study was that 43% had indicated that swimming was a primary. It's the top answer, 43%. So that struck me as rather important too. And it's certainly not that I'm opposed to hockey or ice pads, but one comment I would like to make is that swimming pools save lives. I don't know if hockey does, because the largest percentage of people who drowned in Ontario, I would suggest probably anywhere, but certainly in Ontario, in excess of 40%. The reason they drown is because they don't know how to swim. Swimming pools offer recreational, leisure swimming, all that kind of stuff, water polo, water babies to get them to be comfortable with the water and swim. It's a family recreation that we can all take part in together. And it's something that as a kid, when I was growing up, we used to walk all the way down to the Kiwanis Club in East York in order to swim. And that was a good 40-minute walk one way, and it wasn't uphill. The other thing that struck me was that I also thought back to maintaining the status quo. If you recall, we had an agreement with the city of Barrie for Springwater residents to access city of Barrie recreation programs and services that we ended up renewing it. And if you look at the numbers in 2023-24, it's 82,000. Next year was 85. The next year was 87. The next year was 90. I think that's really important because when we look at a swimming pool in relationship to the ages that can participate in there from pretty well 6 months to 100, and then you look at the amount of money that we're going to be spending on this partnership so that our residents can participate in it. CAO Schmidt was kind enough to bring up some statistical information. And when he brought up the statistical information, it shows here that the top reason that our residents are signing up over there, and once again, Midhurst and Minising are the two largest components here. They're signing up for swimming and aquatics programs, 988 in total. The next thing that I wanted to look at is when they registered the activity categories provided for the previous table I just showed you were further broken down. There was the 988 swim classes, 949 group lessons, and 39 private lessons. It again is at the very, very top of the list. The second thing that I found interesting here is below the camp registrations was 216 active living, which is fitness and sports programs, 120 in the gymnasium. So I feel that our hub, to really be reflective of what the residents through the surveys and through their use of the Berry programs for roughly almost $400,000, tend to be for swimming, predominantly the aquatics program and the gymnasium. And I just see that with the swimming pool being a priority, it would also allow us to wrestle back some of these funds to put towards the ongoing operational costs or the ongoing or even into the build going forward, because these particular dollars aren't coming from DCs. These particular dollars are coming from tax dollars, if I'm not mistaken. I'll look to CEO Schmidt for I'm pretty sure that's where these dollars came from. So that is why I've asked for the reconsideration, and I have a new motion to propose.
And if you, my apologies, not being privy to the conversation as to why. I know we had talked about one pad and a pool. I don't know what you're proposing, so I don't have anything to offer to the conversation. Where is that? That's what I'm saying. So if you wanted to table it, I can't speak to anything that I'm not aware of.
I apologize, Mayor Coughlin. I do have a motion I'd like to table, although I don't have it in front of me, so I would ask that Clerk Ainsworth please read it.
And your seconder? Councillor Fisher?
The amendment would read as follows, to replace the second and third paragraphs in the original motion with the following. That staff be directed to bring forward an alternate simplified and purpose-built design with phase 1 to include a swimming pool of a size and depth suitable for leisure swimming lessons, water aerobics laps, as well as other aquatic activities such as water polo and entry-level competition swimming. And that options for a separate toddler pool, basic diving boards, and water slides be included, as well as an option for a gymnasium. And further, that options for a single ice surface capable of being twinned as a possible phase 2.
All right, Council, having read that, are there any further comments? Councillor Alexander?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So first, I'd like to thank council for entertaining the reconsideration. I was not able to attend that meeting, and as Deputy Mayor Cabral noted, one of the reasons I chose not to was because I did think we were just receiving the report. So I felt I would be able to do follow-up after. So I do appreciate you allowing the reconsideration. With respect to Deputy Mayor Cabral's motion, I think it's very important to me that there's a pool there. This is a multi-million-dollar complex we're building. It's going to cost us a lot of money, and to build one and then still have to have a partnership agreement with Berry, there's just no point in my mind, to be perfectly honest. We should be, if we're investing this type of money, it should be to suit the needs of Springwater as it grows, and it works for us. To just build nicer stuff that we already have, I don't feel that's not the point of this from my perspective. So I am in support of this.
Councillor Moore?
Thank you. Just for clarification, through you, Mayor Coughlin, to Deputy Mayor Cabral, are you still then entertaining the gym?
Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through you, Councillor Moore. Yes, it's included in there as a gymnasium in phase 1.
Oh, thank you.
Councillors Thompson and then Fisher.
And my understanding is that, can you explain the twinned ice surface? So we're going to have a price and an option to, we're still going to get a cost for 2 ice surfaces, regardless of whether we do 1 or 2.
Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through you to Councillor Thompson. I envisioned an ice pad will eventually possibly be required there. Currently, my thoughts on the ice pad are that everybody in the south end of Springwater Township already has a place to play hockey. They're involved in other leagues and we don't get to direct where they play. So the reason I'm suggesting an ice pad capable of being twinned is so that the consultants for phase 2 might be able to come back and provide us with not only the compressor capabilities for a single pad, but also the option of oversizing those facilities so that a second pad could be added at a later date.
Councillor Fisher?
Sorry. I agree with having the ice pads twinned. I think we need to be able to provide facilities today, but have the infrastructure to grow for a growing population. Also, as it pertains to the $80,000 agreement with Barry, you may recall I fought hard to keep it, but I think if we can build facilities in our hub that would allow us to take back that $80,000 and put it back into the operational costs, as again, to the deputy mayor's point, that's coming directly from taxpayers. If we can take that back, I think that would be an advantageous time to do it.
Before I do move on, it was my understanding of the original motion was that we would get a report back from the consultant that showed us an arena with a swimming pool, what this costs, what this costs, and what this costs. So here it is all today. This is our cost. If we want to phase things in and out, if the intent of that report was not that, then that's unfortunate. I also feel that, yes, while 42% of people said they want a pool, I think that there might have been some, in my opinion, maybe misinterpretation when the consultants went out to our community and said, what would you like to see at your hub? Because I know when you say to people, what would you like to see at an airport? They're not going to say airplanes. I think there was an assumption that there was going to be ice. That in my mind, anything north of Highway 9, a community hub is an arena. Again, maybe it's my narrow-minded view, but that's what it is. I have been often accused of wanting to spend every single dollar we have, but I'm not going to lie to you guys. I want 2 pads and a pool. And I want us to find a way to make that happen for our residents, because I feel that we don't build infrastructure for today, we build it for tomorrow. And I think that as we've seen in our first term, the fire hall was 2.2. In our second term, it was 5.8, or I'm misquoting, 5.2, and then it was 7.8. So whether we do 2 pads today or leave a sliver of land and try and build it on tomorrow, they may tell us that it's $5 million in savings, but it might cost us $12 million down the road to put that second pad in. So these are all numbers. I have no proof of any of this. This is just me talking in my experience. I think that this facility that we are going to build is the most significant capital investment Springwater has ever made. And we need to get it right. And it needs to serve, yes, today, and let's get going. I would love to put a shovel in the ground tomorrow, but it needs to serve where our population is going. And I don't disagree that a pool serves everyone, like you said, I've done it myself. I've taken Aquafit when I was pregnant, and I took my babies and we did the swimming classes. Yeah, we all want that here. I'm not disagreeing with any of that, but I think that for us to sit here and say, we need to give on the pool to get a second pad or whatever it is, let's get the numbers back. I would love to see the numbers come. Here's the Taj Mahal. We saw the Taj Mahal, sorry, not the Taj Mahal. We've already seen the Taj Mahal. The more condensed, what does it look like? Here's the 1 pad, 2 pad pool. And then if that's not something we can financially justify, then we start to scale it back. What is the pool component cost? What does each of the pads cost? And then we can make a decision moving forward. To ask for a report on just 1 pad and a pool, I can't support, because in my opinion, we can justify 3 pads in Springwater where our population's there. So if we can get a report that comes back with all the options, and then we can have this conversation again with, all right, let's figure out what it's going to look like. I can fully support, but if the decision today is to move forward with the direction being 1 pad and 1 pool, it's not something I can support, because I don't know what the cost savings are going to be. Like you said, if you have to put all the infrastructure in place to have expansion room for 2 pads, what are we actually saving? So I will go to Councillor Thompson and not seeing any other hands.
Through you, Mayor Coughlin, to Deputy Mayor Cabral, I'm surprised because I thought that's what we had decided last meeting, was to get all these options and the prices so that we could make an informed decision on the cost.
I will go to, oh, sorry, Deputy Cabral and CO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and through you to Councillor Thompson. Yeah, that was kind of the way it went, but the priority was for 2 ice pads. I think the priority is wrong. The priority should be for the things and recreational facilities that all the residents of Springwater Township can utilize, including disabled people, including those that are blind. Anybody can use a pool. And I think it's critical that we put that in place because once again, I'll make the point. Ice hockey's great. It doesn't save lives. Learning how to swim does. I think a pool is critical. And I fault myself at that last meeting for not pressing it forward at that time. But on reflection, I simply, to be quite honest with you, reevaluated. And I think a pool and a gymnasium are the priorities and ice hockey is secondary. It is a significant sport for a select group of residents. It's not for everybody. So if you want to know where I'm coming from, that's where I'm coming from. That's the reason that this stipulates pool, gymnasium, and then phase 2 suggests winning and oversizing the compression equipment, ice making equipment, so that it can support 2 pads if council decides at that time that that's what they want to do. But to be quite honest with you, my priority is a swimming pool and a gymnasium. That's what I think the residents can utilize overall on a regular year-round basis.
Thank you. And Deputy Cabral, and before I do go to other members of council, I think that we all, like we said earlier tonight, we all hear from different people, we all hear different things. Having a consultant come back with, like I said, this is what the total cost is for 2 pads and a pool. This is what it would cost, and the cost savings would be for removing the pool to phase 2. This is what it would cost for moving the second pad into phase 2. That, like, we could sit here all day long, but I don't know what the cost savings are for not having a second pad on an arena, whereby 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, we're gonna have to replace equipment and again, I apologize if this is not your mindset. This is my mindset. And this is why we are elected, because we have differing opinions. And that's the whole purpose to a council, is to bring it together. So I think the most informative report, sorry, Councillor Moore. Correct. So I think that in order to get this to come back with the information is to have all of the information come forward, not just specifically this and that. So if it's Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. The comment I would like to make is that, you know, we're talking about ice pads and how 5 years down the road, they're going to cost more money. Well, everything is going to fit that same slate. So if you want to put your ice pads in and make people wait for a pool that 99% of the residents can use, that's not what my motion is about. And I would just simply call for a vote.
Council, the vote has been called, and Clerk Ainsworth, if I can confirm that the direction to the consultant is 1 pad with a possible in phase 2. So the information will be coming forward to us. The cost of a ice pad in phase 2 is coming forward, whether it's phase 1 or phase 2. Is that correct? CO Schmidt? Thank you.
Sorry, through you, Mayor Coughlin, to members of council, just 2 things to keep in mind. There was a comment, I believe Councillor Moore asked the deputy mayor about a gym. So I just want to be very clear as to what we're talking about and what we might not be talking about. So it's a gymnasium is what I'm understanding. So not necessarily a fitness room or a fitness center or a fitness facility, if you will. So there wouldn't be like weights and that type of stuff, if you will. So that's one clarification. And the other piece I would just put out there, based on the conversations, keep in mind that we are going through an update to our Parks and Rec master plan. And so there may be additional information that you may come out of that. I'm just putting it out there. I don't know for sure, but something for you maybe to consider as it's, again, this is going to be probably one of the most significant projects that the township's going to undertake in the next 10 to 20 years. And obviously we want to get it right. So I don't think it's something that has to be decided upon today kind of thing. I just put it out there that there is that Parks and Rec master plan again that may provide some additional information for council to consider. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. The vote has been called, council. All those in favor? And that has carried. And the main motion as amended. Again. No, I don't want you to read it. Council, would you like Clerk Ainsworth to read this to you? We understand what it is as amended. So the main motion as amended, council. Thank you. Council, I'm going to have to recuse myself from this meeting. I'm going to pass the chair to Deputy Cabral.
All right, thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and I will turn over to Clerk Ainsworth for some direction.
Thank you. The procedure bylaw does have an automatic adjournment at 10 p.m. So for council to finish off the agenda items, there would need to be a motion at this time to extend that automatic adjournment to 11 p.m. The rest of the agenda should be able to be dealt with in that amount of time. Chair, if you could call for a mover and seconder, please, and then a vote.
Yes, call for a mover. Councillor Fisher and Councillor Thompson. And the vote, please. All those in favor? Carried. We now move to notices of motion. We have a notice of motion regarding shipping containers on properties in the township. Notice of motion was moved by Councillor Thompson. May I have a seconder to get it on the floor? Councillor Garwood. The motion is, whereas the zoning bylaw restricts the placement of shipping containers on certain types of properties, and whereas requests have been received by residents to have these regulations reviewed, be it therefore resolved that staff be directed to report back to council on the current regulations and potential alternate options for the placement of shipping containers on various types of properties within the township of Springwater. And I guess I will turn it over to Councillor Thompson for comment.
Like like myself, we've all probably had residents contact us about shipping containers, and I think it would be good for us as a council to review the current bylaws and to see where we stand now and how we can help our residents out to resolve this, and would really like to get a staff report back. One of the questions I do have, I understand this may be a lengthy process because it involves zoning bylaws. Would it be possible through the chair to CO Schmidt I know that some of our residents have removal notices right now for these containers. These removal notices are September the 1st. Is there any way that we could put these notices on hold until we've come to a decision and have more information here?
CO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Councillor Thompson. I believe Councillor Thompson, the zoning bylaw is a township bylaw. And so if direction is provided through council to essentially put on hold those orders, subject to further discussion with the clerk, I believe staff would be in a position to do that. We just need firm direction from council to do so.
Okay.
Other comments from members of council? Councillor Fisher and then Councillor Moore.
Just to follow on, if we were to postpone this removal, what would be advisable? Would it be 30 days, 60 days until you could get back to council?
You directing that to CO Schmidt, Councillor?
Yes, I am.
Fisher?
Sorry.
Yes, CO Schmidt.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if I could, if Mr. or Director Spagnell is on the line or in the meeting, if he might be able to speak to the length of time that this may take.
Thank you. Director Spagnell?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Cabral. So generally speaking, the Planning Act process requires notification. It requires a drafting of a policy or a provision to be followed, and it requires a public meeting. Because this is a township-wide, it would be a township-wide zoning amendment to deal with permissions related to shipping containers. The process could run anywhere from 3 to 6 months. But again, that depends on the extent of the comments that are received, whether or not there's any deferrals, things of that nature. In regular course, a standard zoning bylaw amendment from start to finish usually goes about 3 months when you're talking about complete applications and things of that nature. So that's why I'm giving a ballpark estimate of 3 to 6 months. What I would suggest for council's consideration, if they're looking at providing extensions, maybe the extensions, because we're dealing with potential zoning bylaw infractions, if it is at council's wish, those extensions could be provided or considered until such time as there's resolution on the zoning matter. And the consideration of the zoning provisions. I wouldn't suggest putting a time frame on it for the purpose that if there are some stalls or delays, if council wants to go down this road, we'd have to go back, but that's really council's decision, and staff are in council's hands in that respect.
Follow on, Councillor Thompson.
Through the chair to CEO Schmidt, do we know how many removal notices are out currently?
CEO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I think I would have to defer that to is Emilio Officer Kellington on the call? No, it's something I think we would have to get back to council on unless Clerk Ainsworth may have that information. I don't know how many orders are currently outstanding.
Thank you. Councillor Fisher. Oh, I apologize. I thought you did. Councillor Moore, did you have something to say?
No, thank you. I was just going to ask the clerk if she had the current bylaw, if she could read the current bylaw for me. Do you have that handy? If not, it's not a big deal. It'll come back to us anyway.
Clerk Ainsworth.
Thank you. I would have to defer that to Director Spagnell as it is within the zoning bylaw.
Director Spagnell.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Cabral. I think just through you to Councillor Moore. So generally speaking, the way the bylaw is set up right now is there's a prohibition on the placement of what would be considered as, I guess, parts of former rail cars and things of that nature, which would include these shipping containers. The bylaw right now would only allow the shipping containers to be located on industrial properties where you're allowed to have outside storage. And basically the thought is that those shipping containers are meant to be moved around with whatever items are being stored in them. So essentially there's no real true direction within the bylaw as it relates to where those shipping containers can be located other than industrial properties. So, you know, just going back to my comments about the time frame, I expect and anticipate that there may be a certain number of property owners that may not want to see shipping containers as buildings in certain areas, such as say residential areas and urban areas. There may be property owners on commercial properties or highway commercial properties that want to use shipping containers. There may be farmers or maybe agricultural operations and whatnot that want to use them as well. So, you know, from a bylaw perspective, the bylaw really only directs these to industrial areas for outside storage. And it's for that reason why there's probably so many compliance issues, and I have dealt with quite a number of these issues in the past. So really there's only consideration of the placement of these shipping containers within an industrial zone. And that's why from a review standpoint, to take a look at where it might be permitted in other zones, it would take an in-depth review, and that public process may become extensive because I suspect we'll have some property owners that are in favor of it and there's some property owners that are not. But that's the extent of the bylaw.
Thank you.
Just out of curiosity here, I'm going to turn to Clerk Ainsworth. Given that Councillor Thompson has basically put forth a thought on, I guess, foregoing or delaying moving these shipping containers, is there a process that he might be able to follow to propose that?
Yes, as this notice of motion is by Councillor Thompson, you may add in some additional information without having an official amendment. What I have drafted is for an additional paragraph to state, and further that staff be directed to pause enforcement of shipping containers until the subsequent report is presented and a decision of council is made. And in addition to that, I believe there are 4 to 5 current enforcement matters with notices that have been provided to landowners regarding shipping containers.
Thank you. Would that entail then reaching back out to them and advising them that they are going to be not have to follow that at this present time?
That is correct. Yes, and any complaints that would be received subsequent to this would be notified that there is a pause on enforcement at this time.
Any further comment from members of council? All right, then I guess we can call for the vote. All those in favor? Carried. Items for future consideration. Are there any items for future consideration that councillor wishes to present? Seeing none, we will, oops, I'm sorry. Oh, I apologize. I missed that one. Any additional notices of motion? Seeing none, we'll move on. I've already covered the future consideration though, so let's continue. Then we're at the next page here. May I have a mover and seconder for approval of the bylaws? Of Councillor Thompson, Councillor Moore, that the bylaws listed herein be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. 2023-056, establish public highway Glen Echo. 2023-057, partnership agreement with NVCA Edenvale Conservation Area. 5000-371 ZB 2023-009 Stubbings 1386 Penetanguishene Road. Are there any questions or comments on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Carried. May I have a mover and seconder for the confirmatory bylaw? Councillor Garwood, Councillor Alexander. That bylaw 2023-058 to confirm and adopt the proceedings of council at the regular meeting held on June 7th, 2023, listed herein be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? Carried. May I have a mover and seconder to adjourn the meeting? Councillor Fisher and Councillor Moore. May I have that the regular meeting of the Township of Springwater does now adjourn at 10:11 p.m. to meet again at regular meeting on June the 21st, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? Carried.